Hey everyone, welcome to Normal America Show. Host Rob Knorr. It's great to see you. Indian Jesus, you're chatting on X. Can other people on X see it? No, I don't think they could see it live. They could see it on my channel. Yeah, see? It's great to be here. I'm having a rough day. A very rough day here. So, some things it's difficult to talk to my wife about. So I figured I'd come on here and talk to you all about it. Some interesting financial decisions that I've made. Oh, you can't see each other in that chat? Okay, cool. I didn't know that. It's great to see you all here. Buddha, Roar, Achilles, Jerry, Indian, thank you. Department of Criminal Imprisonment, what's happening? Flim Talk. It's great to see you all here. A great day. Listen, I should have worn my Snuggie thing up here because it is cold in this room right now. That's okay. We'll get fired up. Yelling about politics. Woo! Oh, you like that gay odyssey? Thank you, man. I like doing that video, too. It's fun. And I was winning poker while it was going on. Bam, bam, bam. Yeah, the Hawk Tuah Meme coin. Oh, boy. I lost all that RV money. What's up, Conservative Carnage? We'll get to my savings and the Hawk Tuah business in a moment. But before we get there, before we talk about my hardships, let's ask you all. How are you all doing? Oh, my goodness. I got to clean this thing. Get dirty. Dirty, dirty, dirty. Now it's on my mind. Let's see if I can do it right now. Did a little actual stuff this morning for the channel. Like, changed my link tree and some of my little things like that I should have done a long time ago. But I'm terrible when it comes to all that stuff. Ugh. You know who's good at that stuff? Black Elk. He's the man, my editor. He keeps me on my toes. Ah, shit. I forgot. Black Elk's been asking me for like 3 minutes. He's too nice. Black Elk's way too nice to me, which is a good thing for me. Like, he'll ask me for something and then I forget to deliver on it. And then like 2 months later, he'll be like, So he asked me like 3 months ago, he's like, hey, it would be good for thumbnails if you sent me just a bunch of pictures of your face doing like different or shit like that. And then I always forget. I always forget to send him that. And I told him, I was like, well, wait until I get a haircut. So now I'm a little more trimmed up. I'm a little more presentable. Maybe it would be a good time to do that. God's favorite aunt says, my dad is in the hospital dying. I still don't have a job and I'm being sued for $2,600. Man, that's terrible. I'll be praying for you, man. That's terrible. Thanks. Good luck, Conservative Carnage. I'd love to get on Piers Morgan. Hutch, on the other end of things, Hutch says, my wife gave me a Hawk Tuah, so I'm doing great. Well, there you go. It is a comfy. That's what it's called. A comfy. I have one, too. I've worn it on stream before, but I threatened to bring it up here, but I didn't. So let's get right into it. Let me tell you about my difficult day. You're getting sued for $70,000. As far as I know, I'm not being sued for any money, but I do have some financial difficulties. So for those that don't know, sorry, Jack of Trades. Yeah, the only reason I kicked Manar is because I don't want to keep bringing him on accidentally and forgetting who he is, and I'm tired of the same argument, disingenuous argument every week now. Anywho, for those that are unaware, the Hawk Tuah girl, I'm not going to... Okay, just in case you're an old man that's watching me, there are these people that do these, like, I don't even know what you call them, like video guy on the street interviews, and they're so dumb. Well, what's your body count? How many people you slept with? Blah, 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 blah. There's people that's their entire content. So this one girl they go up to, and she says she Hawk Tuahs on while performing oral intercourse on people. She became famous for it. Whatever, I don't really care. That's the gist of so this woman parlayed it into some good faith engagement. Now has a talk show, whatever, right? she started a meme coin. Now, I don't know much about crypto, but I said to myself, wow, a new exciting investment opportunity from the woman who got famous, basically saying she likes to spit on male genitalia on the street. Sign me up. That has to be a win. There's a stable currency. And so, predictably, they start this cryptocurrency. I don't know much about cryptocurrency. I do know it took within a couple of hours at least, there was basically a rug pull. And so everyone who bought into this currency ended up losing millions of dollars. And people collected fees that she was working with of millions of dollars and this, that, and the other. And so the question on everyone's mind is, did I lose all of my savings on the Hawk Tuah Meme coin? And the answer is no, I did not. I did not invest in the Hawk Tuah Meme coin. So there you go. I've successfully clickbaited everyone in with the title. But no, I did not. I wisely did not invest in the Hawk Tuah coin. It's interesting. On one hand, it's terrible, these crypto scams that people get into, and it's a lot of people in the streaming space that attaches their name to a cryptocurrency and then ends up screwing people over. But my understanding is this. My guess would be 90 to 95% of the people that are investing in a coin like that are doing it because they're hoping to get out and scam someone. Not scam necessarily, but they want someone else holding the bag. So you're basically pumping up a currency that you know has no intrinsic value. But the idea is, I'll buy it as a joke at 100, and then it'll go up to 1,000, and then I'll sell. And that moron that bought it at 1,000, by the time he has a chance to sell, it'll be back down to $50, and he loses all of his money, right? So it's like everybody. Am I wrong? Everybody knows that's the goal, right? No one's like, I think this is going to be a long-term viable currency. Right? No one got into the meme coins thinking that, right? So I would say, although it sucks that apparently the people, Hawk Tuah girl and the people around her, basically scammed, or I'll be careful, allegedly scammed, or it looks shady or unethical, something happened where it seems like someone made piles of money and almost everyone else lost. Isn't that what most of the people getting into it were basically trying to do? Let someone else holding the bag? So, I don't know. The whole thing's stupid. If you're putting your money in a meme coin like that, you're basically just gambling. That's all it is. I mean, to me, it's just like playing poker with people. Someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. Yeah, or they think it's a meme and it's funny, in which case, you kind of have to know that the price is going to collapse in it. So, I don't know. But I don't have much to say on the Hawk Tuah thing. It was just, I thought it was funny that was the big story going in today. However, I did have a slight financial thing. So, I always come on here. I have the greatest wife in the world. I really do. I love her. I think she's beautiful. She's a fantastic mother, fantastic wife. And the only reason that I could do this show is because of how great she is raising my son, working around the house to allow me to put time into a show like this. But I'm going to complain about my wife today. And if she's listening, I'm probably going to get yelled at. But I don't care. All right, you ready? So here are some real financial situations we're having. So I wake up today and it's snowing. I would guess we got probably 4 to 6 inches of snow. And so it's the first big snow of the year here in rural Pennsylvania. And I was like, I'm not going to leave the house unless something emergency comes up. And my wife's dropping little hints all day. And then finally she just is like, well, I got to get dressed. I'm like, well, what's up? Where are you going? And she's like, well, I got to go to the gas station and pick up a vape. Because she's not weed vape, but regular vape, nicotine vape. Sometimes she uses the vape. And, Ranger and Rogon, Kick and Twitch. Wow. And I said, no, of course, I'll go. And she says, someone's raiding already? Is that true? Goodness gracious, was it Ranger and... Oh, you know what? I've taken alerts off. Black Elk probably took the alerts off my channel. Thank you so much. If someone subscribes or donates on Twitch, please let me know in the chat because I can't see now. So anyways, my wife sends me out to the store. The roads were decently clear, but it's still really windy and cold. And so I go out, bundle up, fire up the car. The gas station's probably a 7-minute drive from me. It's not that far. I go down to the light, take a left, up the hill to the gas station, and my car stalls. Like, as I'm driving, the first thing I noticed was that my wipers started to go slower, and then my speedometer just goes to 0, and I go to hit the gas, and there's nothing. And it's, of course, I'm going uphill, so if it was downhill, you could have coasted into a place. But because I'm going uphill, I just, like, emergency, as I'm going, like, I end up, there's nowhere to pull off. So I end up pulling off in front of a humane society that's right up the road. And I could barely get off the white line. And thankfully, her parents came and saved me. And it's just my battery died, I think, is the problem. But nonetheless, my 15-minute trip to the gas station to get my son some apple juice and my wife a vape turned into a 2.5-hour extravaganza of me sitting in a freezing car on the white line on the side of the road while cars zoomed by me. So there you go. There's me. There's my complaint. Yeah, I've been on Kick for a while. There it is. So that's what the great Courtney Knorr had me doing today. It is. It's, you know, my Ferrari. That is the problem. Yeah. Yeah, it might be an alternator or it might be the battery. It did this one time to me before where I pulled into that same gas station and it stalled out as I pulled in. And I was like, tried to start it. It didn't start. So I went into the store and bought what I was getting. And then I came out and it started right up. And so I said, I should probably get this checked out, and then never did and haven't had a problem. So anyways, the car's due for inspection next month anyways, so I just drove it to the place that inspects our car, and they're going to do it. So it sucks to have that. Am I still doing the green screen with the Milky Mom? I don't remember that plan. So there you go. I'll be paying for a car inspection next week, right before Christmas. Yay! So all of your money that you donate to me will probably be going to a new battery. I don't think it'll be that bad, though. So there you go. So, yay! What are we talking about today? Oh, well, boy, Enigma wants to call in again. Maybe we'll do that. I thought we could talk about the Pete Hegseth nomination. Problems with that. Yeah, Jerry, I'm going to just... I know that it could be the alternator. I'm just going to let the professionals deal with it at the place. It's one of the things... We got really good mechanics that I go to that are friends of the family. So I trust them. It's the type of mechanic you drop it off and they tell you it needs something. That's what it needs. And I've had some bad mechanic experiences where people have told me I need $1,000 worth of work. Then I take it to a different shop and they say $150. So it's nice to finally have some mechanics that you don't have to worry about it. If they tell you, hey, this is what it needs, that's what it needs. No, I don't share a room, Jack of Trades. We have my work. Although I do have to stay overnight, there is a separate room for us. In fact, it's part of in Pennsylvania, it's part of the licensing requirements that each person has to have their own bedroom, and have privacy, and each bedroom has to be equipped with so many things. Let's see what Enigma wants today. It's probably going to be a good one. We'll start with that, and then we'll get into... If anyone wants to call in, that's fine. We can always take call-ins. Your wife's a mechanic? That's cool. All right. There There's the link to the Discord. Let's see what Enigma wants first. I think he said he's out of vodka or something. Okay, Enigma, what's up this fine evening? I could hear you. What's happening? Okay. Okay, go ahead. Okay.
Not banned anymore. And I wanted to make music that your channel could use.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm apparently I'm writing vampire-like musicals right now.
Okay.
So they're like 8-10 minutes long chapters.
Okay.
If I'm asking for a favor to listen to my latest piece because I personally think it's complete garbage, and I need in the chat tell me it's complete garbage because my it's like my impression of my music is relies on my emotional state. So for me to get a reality check, I need to hear in the chat what they think of the latest.
So you want me to play the audio that you sent me on X?
No. I don't want you to take up that. Sure, you could play it, but I was thinking about listen to what is supposed to call the Wasp King preview, but I accidentally wrote review, and I'm too lazy to change the title to preview. But anyways, I also have an issue yesterday. My impression, you weren't really patient with one of your call-ins.
That's true.
You mentioned you only had 2 hours, and my impression was you probably would have skipped that stream yesterday. Actually,
I'm not sure what you're getting at there. I usually stream on Wednesday. I had some family business that was going on Wednesday evening.
Okay, the Sharia guy.
Now listen. Let me get out what I'm saying, and then you could respond.
Okay,
I had some family obligations in the evening. I had scheduled a show with a friend of mine, let's be frank. He had family obligations that came up, so he was unable to do the show that we had planned. I found that out 10 minutes before the show, so I said we'll just do an audience choice. If that's call-in, so be it. But I only had 2 hours.
Oh, yeah. But I got the impression that you weren't really the usual Rob I have come to like, because you're very fair. You can listen to opposing views instead of being a Destiny that only wants to listen to one.
Maybe that's the case. I guess it's hard to criticize myself. Maybe I was in a rush yesterday. That's not, in my opinion, why I was short with Manar. I was short with Manar because they called in and talked over me and had this garbage argument that they kept saying, no, you're strawmanning me, and then proceeded to strawman me the week before. And then they called back in yesterday with the exact same thing, talking over me the whole time, strawmanning my argument while accusing me of strawmanning them, and I'm done with it. I'm not going to talk to someone who advocates wanting his Muslim religion to have total control over the government where he lives, and then him trying to make that more likely to be legitimized and be allowed around the world by saying, as a Christian, you should want your church to be the sole arbiter of laws as well. And then when I tried to proceed in good faith through that discussion, as I did the last time he called in, him to continually change his position over and over and over again. And him to say things like, I'm just sucking up to the LGBT community, etc., etc. I choose to not go through that. Am I obligated every week to deal 20 minutes with this, of just the same argument over and over with him steelmanning? So that's why I was short with that person yesterday.
Okay, nice. Because I think Andrew, for example, would have agreed with him to a
That's fine.
degree.
I'll debate Andrew and have debated Andrew on Christian nationalism. Andrew's someone who you could actually have a discussion with that like takes turns when talking, actually makes salient points, doesn't need to
By the way,
misrepresent you every statement. That's fine. I'll have that discussion with people that make that argument better than the person yesterday. I'm not obligated to deal with the same thing over and over again.
of course, your stream is yours, so you don't have to. But it just came across that it wasn't the usual Rob that I'm used to.
Maybe that might be true.
Mm.
I don't know. I guess I feel like even though I take call-ins, which is part of the church, maybe I should get better at that. If you had a show and the same person called in week after week after week, strawmanning you, and you had the same argument, probably at some point you would have a short fuse with it and just be like, yeah, I'm done with this.
So Rob, but actually in this case, I think you just had a short fuse and you didn't actually try to have a good combo.
It was the
On
same
site.
conversation as the week before, and he was
Okay.
misrepresenting me again. And when I went and talked about the misrepresentation and then talked about what he believed, and he said, no, you're misrepresenting me. And then I accurately described what he wanted, and then he kept shifting. It was literally the exact same conversation we had for 20 minutes the week before. And I just said, yeah,
Okay.
I'm done. And he kept trying to
Okay.
talk over
You
me,
might
so I
have-
said, I'm done with it.
You might be right. I missed the converse you have had with him before, but from my perspective, it came across that you were the one strawmanning.
Okay, how was I strawmanning him? Go ahead.
Because when he said you were blending the idea of a secular society when he talked about America becoming a Christian, getting their hate this fact that I can't speak English, although I take very much patience to write my lyrics in English. But I'm having issues right now. Okay. Thing is, he wasn't talking about if people vote enough, America ends up being Sharia law. He's talking about making it a fundamental thing about America being a Christian society.
That's not what he's doing. That is incorrect. You are not knowledgeable of what his stance was. His stance the first time he called in was as follows: that I am sucking up to the LGBT community and I am a bad Christian because as a Christian, I should not want limited government. I should not prioritize people's liberty. Instead, I should want the church that I go to be the ones that create and control the laws of this country. And if I don't, then that proves that I'm just sucking up to the LGBT community and that I want a space for everyone and that everyone must be allowed to do whatever they want. For example, the people that sexualize children, I should say they should be allowed to sexualize children because I believe in a country where everyone has space. And I said, no, that's not what I believe. And I said, if you're talking about a theocracy, wouldn't that mean? I said, what's your religion? They said Muslim. I said, okay. Then if you were of a particular perspective of Islam that felt that women should not be allowed to leave their homes unattended by a man or with their face not covered by a mask, you think that that should be the laws of the country because that's what the prevailing religion of that region says? And he tried to say, no, I think that it would allow other people to have space to do what they want, which is exactly what he's accusing me of. And so when I said, oh, so then you think that people other than your religious holy men should have say in what the laws are? And he makes no sense. We went round and round about this for 20 minutes until eventually I said, let's move on to another caller because there were other people in the queue. He calls in the next week with the exact same argument. Oh, you want space for everyone. You're pandering to the LGBT community. The exact same argument.
take me for example. I'm a Swedish naturalist, and which means I'm very, very liberal. Sweden was the first European country to legislate free speech.
Okay.
So it means that as a conservative, I'm very much in tune with what you're saying. But I also consider that every country should adhere to their culture, and if that means being religiously fundamental, it should be okay without us coming and telling them, no, we need to liberate you from
Okay,
your.
so you're in Sweden?
Yeah.
Okay, let's say they import at this point where the country is 51% Islam. Okay? You
Yeah.
think that then those people should have the right to vote, that our mosques create all laws and that you are beholden to their laws? You would be okay with that, right? Because they're just adhering to their culture, correct?
Yes, unfortunately, because I believe in democracy. Because if we decided to import so many people and they took over the country, it's another means instead of using war to bloodshed to make changes of the country.
See, that's
So
the
if
difference.
we
That's why
were
I think
stupid
that
enough,
theocracy is bad. And it's interesting because it's actually the criticism that he was leveling at me that actually he and you suffer that criticism. And that criticism was that basically if we don't, that I just would allow space for anything to go, you know, as long as, and as a Christian, that would be bad. It's actually the exact opposite that would be true. That would mean that you would actually be for a tyranny of democracy. I'm not for that. So I believe in principles such as that are based in
wait. What actually do you mean with tyranny of democracy?
that if 51% of the people vote to murder you and take your shit, well, that's the will of the people, and so we have to accept it. That's tyranny of democracy.
Yes, that's why I'm not completely okay with democracy, because
But you
I
just
believe
said
in
you were.
monarchy instead.
You just
Yes,
said you
I
were.
am. I am a liberal. I believe that if we use, oh my God, okay. The thing is that if we decide to let in people that will change our demographic to the point that we need to concede that they want some theocracy instead of a liberal society, then that's our fault. We let it happen, and I believe that we should.
How does that? But you've contradicted yourself. You just said that you would be for 51% of the people vote, for example, Sharia law. You would say, well, that's democracy. We have to accept it. But then when I bring up the concept of tyranny, please let me finish. When I bring up the concept of tyranny of democracy, you say, but that's why I'm not a supporter of democracy. But you are. You just said it. And now you continue to reiterate, well, it's our fault if we allow 51% of the people to become like that. Okay,
yes,
whatever.
We should use. Okay, sorry.
Go ahead. Can you explain how you're both supporting democracy and condemning democracy? Can you explain why that's not a contradiction?
The very reason Churchill mentioned that it's the best form of government.
Democracy.
The issue is that we should become more involved in politics, and we shouldn't just hand it out to, for example, from 2010 in Sweden, the Sweden Democrats came in, and they are a conservative Swedish party that was painted for several years being racist when they weren't. The issue is that
who cares how they're painted? If 51% of the people think they're racist and should be banned, you would say that's okay.
Yeah, but the interesting
that's a bad system.
Now you're talking to my point. Democracy can be a bad thing, because if you don't inform your public what is going to happen afterwards, and it ends up becoming
who is you if you don't inform? Who is the you? You the individual? You the government? You your political party? Who is
public, the third media informing the public of real
so then
issues.
your system of that you're advocating for of direct democracy, that if 51% of the people want to ban a political party for being racist or want to steal all of your
Isn't that
or whatever,
democracy?
Let me finish. It's not what it is. It's you saying this is the system that you want. Yes, I agree direct democracy would be 51% of people vote something and that should happen. I'm not defending that system. You are. And you're saying, yes, it can be good or bad, but the bulwark against it, the responsibility to make sure it doesn't get bad, are you ready for this, audience? Falls on the media. Put your trust in the media. That's who will save us from the excesses of tyranny of a democracy. I don't know how the media is in Sweden. I'll tell you how it is in the United States of America. Not very good. And if I'm relying on, for example, my kid not being sexualized in school, or me not being punished because of my skin color or because of my political leanings or whatever, if the only bulwark against that is, well, I hope the New York Times speaks up for me, I'm screwed. So no, I think that the system you're advocating for is very poor.
Which was actually to the point your caller yesterday of becoming a religious theocracy of very poignant points about morality would be better possibly than democracy. Because what are you actually?
That's not his point.
Wait, Robert. You're saying that we shouldn't consider 51% of the vote.
I'm saying that the foundation of a country should have principles that stay there even beyond what 51% of people believe. So 51%, for example, we have free speech in the United States. You should have the right to that free speech. Even if 90% of people think that your speech sucks, you should still have that right. It should not be up to the whims of people to say, do we like this or do we not? We have a Second Amendment right to protect ourselves. You should have that right, even if 90% of people dislike you and think that you shouldn't have that right. You have a right to privacy from the government going through your personal effects, papers and stuff. You should have that right, even if 80 to 90% of people say, no, you as an individual shouldn't have that. That stuff shouldn't be left to a tyranny of democracy. Now, the problem is, the way Menard's trying to make this argument is, he says, but look at the excesses that your system's allowed, which is true. There's a lot of bad things that have happened as a result of our system. He talks a lot about the LGBT community, and he would mention things specifically that are pushed in our culture and society that as a Christian, I'm not a fan of. But I think that that stuff should have the right to be spoken about, not promoted by our government, but it should be allowed out there in culture. I would disagree with someone like Andrew Wilson, for example. Andrew Wilson told me one time he doesn't think that anyone who is a homosexual should be allowed to be on any sort of television or, I would assume, streaming, whatever. I think that's way too far. I think the fact that we would say, if we find out you're gay, you're not allowed to be on TV anymore. I asked him specifically about the actor from Star Trek, George Takei. I said, if George Takei plays Sulu on Star Trek, and the character Sulu never is gay, he's never in a homosexual relationship, should that be allowed? He said, probably not. No. If we know the man is gay, he should not be allowed to have access to the public in any shape or form. I think that's fucking nuts and insane, right? That the problem is, Menard's making this argument that no, I have to support my religion being the creator, the sole creator of laws. And when I ask, well, how do we decide which religion? He says whichever one's the most popular at the time, which means it's just democracy. So if 51% of the people are Protestant, then the laws should all be made by the Protestant church. But if that would change and 51% would become Catholic, now the Catholic Church gets to control and make the laws. But if 51% became atheist, then presumably atheists would make the laws. If 51% became Muslim, then presumably Muslims would make the law. Then coming from the mosques, etc. That's still a tyranny of democracy and would still allow a bunch of bad stuff. Most people that believe in a theocracy make the assumption that it'll be their particular brand of religion that will be the ones controlling things and therefore everything would be better. I disagree. That's my take on it. I think that you should have the right to exist in the public eye if you're not Orthodox Christian or if you're a homosexual. I think you should be allowed to exist. That's different than should you promote it to children in schools.
What is your opinion? Do you think Andrew's point of view, if we will steal man, it would mean it's from Mesopotamia when we distinguished the law of God from the law of men? That he's simply talking about not culturally promoting a view of homosexuality, for example, but he's not directly or openly telling, okay, you can be a homosexual, but we're not going to promote it. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I don't understand exactly what you're talking about, or the relevance to what we're talking about.
Well, you mentioned Andrew. He thought no form of homosexuality should be promoted.
Well, how do you define promotion?
Promotion, as in speaking openly, it's okay to be homosexual.
But that's not what Andrew says. Andrew says no. Andrew would claim it's promotion of homosexuality to have a person that is known to be a homosexual who is on a movie portraying a character who is not a homosexual. That would still be promotion of homosexuality.
Okay. Then maybe I have an issue with Andrew then.
And so there's different ways to look at it. Like, why shouldn't I be allowed to make a movie that has two homosexual characters that are the heroes? Why shouldn't I be allowed? You and me may have the right to say that's garbage. I don't want to see that shit. But why should it be illegal for me to do that? Why should the government say, no, you can't do that?
Well, it shouldn't. It's simply, I take maybe a Russian view of this, because they have a very autocratic view, or not promoting homosexuality, LGBT rights, etc. But it doesn't necessarily mean in the quiet that they actually are okay with it. They're just not gonna promote it by law.
That's fine. Where have I suggested anything? Yes, I don't think the government should have any business whatsoever promoting alternative lifestyles, whether it be LGBT, whether it be fucking veganism. I think it's worse with the LGBT shit. My personal belief is I have friends that are gay. I don't have a problem with them being gay at all. I think they should have the right to get married. But I do think that it is abnormal, and that the normalization of it isn't something that I celebrate. I don't.
Yeah,
just like I wouldn't want to normalize being bipolar. I think that you could say, look, bipolar is something, it's not the same as homosexuality, but we don't normalize it. We could say we don't treat people like shit because they're bipolar, but it's not something to aspire to be. And before people shit on me and say no one's doing that, yeah, I worked with a doctor in my line of work that thought that autism was closeness to God, and therefore autism was something to aspire to. That basically you were a better person for being autistic. That shit's crazy. That doesn't mean you treat autistic people like shit, but you don't promote it as something that's like a positive like that.
Yeah, some kind of superpower, which people usually do.
All right, I'm going to let you go and bring in Bubblegum Gun. He wants to talk about sort of the same topic. So,
Thank you.
No problem, Enigma. Thanks, man. All right. What's up, Bubblegum Gun? Can you hear me?
Hey, am I coming through?
You're coming through, man. What's happening?
All right, then. Here, let me just click around a little bit because I haven't been on this. There we go. Now I can see it.
Good? All right. Yeah. You sound good. You're coming through well on my end.
So what the guy was discussing earlier, I think what he's trying to get at, it's a question of worldview. So how does one justify their worldview? For example, you can be for democracy, and that's all fine and good, but you have to have a way to provide a justification as to why we ought have a democracy. For example, Andrew Wilson justifies his worldview of being a Christian nationalist, even though it's an oxymoron. He justifies that through God because, he's a Christian. So that's the way he justifies his worldview. So how do you justify your worldview there, Rob, of whatever government you want to choose?
I justify it by saying we should prioritize personal freedom and liberty, and that our government should be as limited as possible. Now,
Well,
I'll grant you, right? I'll grant you this, that the problem will be if you don't say that our laws should be crafted by a higher power, that you'll always get to a point where it's like, yes, but isn't it partially subjective? Yes. So, for example, you could say, well, if you're against laws, if you want laws against murder, wouldn't that mean that you're infringing on someone's right to murder someone else? That you're using government authoritarianism to prevent that? Yes. I'm saying it's a starting point, though, that we start from the assumption that people should basically be allowed to do what they want until they start to physically harm other people. And then we go from there and we talk about the things that are disagreements on what exactly that means. But that's where we should start and where my worldview comes from.
Well, that's where we should start. No,
Yes.
not exactly. That's not where we should start. That's where your preference. You think we should start.
Yes, that's my preference is where we should start. Your preference may be different, but that is my preference where we should start.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just a preference. You're
Right.
You're
Just
not
like-
justifying your preference. You
I
need to
am
justify
justifying
How?
my preference.
How are you justifying your preference?
I'm justifying my preference because I think that there are people that we could deem are reasonable people or good people, and there are people that we could
Reasonable.
deem bad people or immoral. Okay, let's use the word morality. There are people that we
Wait,
could
wait,
deem...
wait.
Go ahead,
Moral.
go ahead. Let's go with the sophistry. Go ahead. Justify
you-
your morality. Where's your morality come from?
Wait.
Where's
Rob,
your
I'm
no?
not-
Whoa. Where's your morality come from? Go ahead.
Rob,
Go
I'm
ahead.
not making moral claims
Where's
here.
your morality come from? Go ahead.
Rob, I'm not making moral claims. You're the
Okay,
one
you're not
moral
making
claims
moral
here.
claims, but I'm asking you. I've
You're
outlined
the
my
one
framework. I've outlined my framework. We'll go quid pro
Rob.
quo. We'll go quid pro quo. You've asked me to outline mine. I've answered your position. Now I'm asking yours. Then you could ask me a question. That's how we'll do it. Quid pro quo.
Sure.
Okay. So
yeah.
your moral claims. How would you start with a system of government? Where are the moral underpinnings for what you believe we should do?
Yeah, for my underpinnings, I'm a theist, so I'm a theocrat.
Okay.
So you're gonna say you're a theocrat too, right?
No.
Oh, so you don't believe in God?
No, I
So
do
you
believe in
haven't-
God,
so-
but theocrat would
No.
assume theocrat, if I'm understanding the term correctly, would mean I believe that
Ruled by God.
laws of the country should
No,
come from
that's not-
God.
No, it means you follow the law of God. Not that you follow.
Well, I could follow the law of God, but the question is
No,
when
no,
it
it
comes.
doesn't mean. No, it doesn't mean what you're saying. It doesn't
Okay,
mean that you
then
follow.
I believe that I should follow the laws of God as I interpret what the laws of God are. It is a separate question
Yeah,
as
you
to
tell me
whether
those?
or not that should be the laws of our country.
Well, yeah. So if you're gonna follow the laws of God, that means we stone the gays. So you okay with stoning the gays? Or
No,
you
I'm
agree
not
with
okay.
Andrew Wilson?
I'm not okay with stoning the gays. I'm okay
So which
with
God? So which God are you following there, Rob?
Okay, which God are you following? I've answered your questions. Which God are you
I'm
following?
Yeah, I'm following the ultimate.
Okay, and who's the ultimate? Are they okay with stoning the gays? Can you show
Yes.
me? Yeah, so you're for stoning the gays.
Yes.
Okay, well, I disagree with you and think you're a
Well,
disgusting monster.
Rob, well, that's a great feeling of yours, but you're not telling me why we not ought stone the gays when you yourself.
Because
are theocrat.
murdering someone for consensual acts that adults are taking
you're a
is
Christian.
grotesque. I am a Christian, that's correct.
Yeah, your God says stone the gays.
I don't believe so.
It does.
I don't care. Then leave God stone them. I'm not going to.
So it's whatever you feel then, Rob.
That is
huh?
absolutely correct. Yes.
Well, I win the debate then.
No, you don't win the debate because you want to stone
Right.
people. You want to stone people for consensual sexual acts.
Based on what, Rob? Based on the God, right?
That's fine. It could be
that's
based
my
on what it could be
justification.
based on whatever you want. I don't give a shit. You may have a good
I
justification.
have
for
justification.
Doing so.
You don't.
I do have justification. My
No, you don't. You
justification is that I think that our government should be limited, our laws should be limited to allow people to do what they want until they physically harm other people.
That's your preference.
That
That's
is
not
my
your
preference. That is absolutely
Provide
my
a-
preference. That is
provide a
absolutely
justification.
I am providing the justification. The justification for that is I believe that you should be allowed to have as much autonomy over yourself as possible until you harm other people physically.
That's your preference. You're
That's
telling me
my
your
justification. Yeah, that
telling me your
is not
justification for your
that is
preference
my
is
justification. My justification is that you should be allowed to do what you want until you harm other people.
Okay, Rob. Okay, you're telling me that your preference is that you ought to do whatever you want to harm other people, and then I'm asking you, what's your justification for that?
My
preference?
justification is that
It's your preference.
the world is a better place, and that you have more autonomy over yourself when you're allowed to take actions that aren't limited by the government until you harm other people.
Yeah,
Now let's talk. So can you give us your real name as someone who wants to stone gay people? Go ahead.
Oh, I would, but
Go
you
ahead.
know, I have,
No, please, give us
Rob,
your real
Rob,
name.
Rob,
Because
Rob,
you don't
Rob.
know. You're so... No, listen, please. Hear me out. You're so clear in your conviction. It is clearly the morally virtuous thing to do. You don't want to hide behind a cloak of anonymity with your strong Christian beliefs, correct? So tell us, what's your real name? Where's your place of work?
Look, I'll come on stream. I'll show my face. I
Yeah,
have no
well,
problem.
that sounds great. And give us your real name, your
Rob,
place of work, etc. Unless you're hiding something. Why would you
I'm
hide?
not, Rob.
Wait. Where's your moral fortitude? Where's your moral fortitude?
Yeah, I get that from
You're
God.
shameful. You get it from God, and yet you're ashamed. You're ashamed
No.
to speak His
No,
name, and
Rob.
to speak what His law
Rob.
should be. You're ashamed.
Rob.
You have to hide behind anonymity. Why?
Rob, I'm a very proud racist.
You're racist. That's great. You're racist. You want to stone gay people. Great. What's your name?
Rob, it's that other people were after me. It's not that you're
Oh,
not the only one
but
who's
God
triggered
will
by me.
protect you. Why do you care if other people are after you? The law of
Rob,
God's all that matters.
Rob, it's not as simple as you think. There are other forces beyond just human forces.
No. That sounds like your preference. But the only law that
that's the
matters,
reality.
the only law that matters is that of the ultimate, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Rob,
then
you
why
don't
are
think I
you
have a target on
concerned?
my-
Why are you concerned
Rob.
about human forces?
Rob, I have a target on my back. I'm very
Well,
aware.
God will protect you, or He won't, and you'll end up with God. You're clearly doing the will of God.
Rob,
so
Rob,
why
you
are
don't
you
know
worried
me.
about having a target on your back?
Rob, you're not the only person. I'm very infamous on the internet.
I don't give a shit that you're infamous. Is God proud of you?
But why?
Is
why
God
am I
proud of
infamous?
you?
Rob,
Is
you gotta
God
know
proud of
why.
you?
Rob, you got to know why.
Wait. Why are you hiding from this question? Is God proud of you?
Yes, he is.
Then why do you care what humans think of you?
Rob,
It sounds like this is the same criticism that you would offer of
It's
people
why
that you
I'm
think are bad
infamous.
Christians. It
No,
sounds like,
Rob.
yes, it sounds like moral cowardice on your part. That's what it sounds like.
Rob, you lost the argument.
I did not lose the argument.
This is just
I
ad
might
hominem
be
attacks.
a
What's
self-identified
ad hominem
bad
attack?
Christian, but I'm not someone touting that I'm really like a soldier of God that's too much of a moral coward to tell us who you really
What
are.
if this ad hominem attacks?
It's not an ad. How is that ad hominem?
You're calling me a coward, dude.
I'm saying just you've lost the argument because you've engaged in
No,
an
I didn't.
active...
I won.
You did not win. You've lost the argument because you are a moral coward in the face of God. You are unwilling to proudly share the word of God without hiding behind a cloak of anonymity.
I just did.
What's your name?
Rob.
Oh, so you
the
are
reason-
doing it from a cloak of anonymity.
No, Rob.
Oh, then what's your name? You can't say no.
I'm trying to get there, man. You gotta
Okay,
let me
but
talk.
well, then give us your name, your address, your place of employment, and then you can expound on it. No problem.
Okay, the reason I'm infamous on the internet. Let me start there, please.
No. Why don't you start with your name, your location, your place of work?
Yeah, let me give you my social security. and my
I don't
credit
need
card
that.
number.
I don't need that.
Look, I'll show my face. How
That's
about that?
not so. You're unwilling. So what you're going to
I'm
do
gonna
is
show
you're
my
going to
face.
expect. You're going to no. See, you're not going to answer the question. What you're going to do is explain why you won't answer the question. That's what you're going to do. You're going to say, Rob, I'm very infamous, and there are people out to get me, and blah blah blah. So you're claiming that yes, you will answer. You'll stop being anonymous, but you won't. You're not going to.
I'm trying to show my face, man.
Showing your face isn't the same as showing your name, your location, your place of work.
Oh, Rob, look, I'm infamous for a reason.
What does that have to do? You're only
I'm
willing
trying-
to speak the truth of God behind a cloak of anonymity.
Rob,
Just
Rob.
admit that. Just admit, yes, I will only say this stuff on the condition that my real name remain anonymous. Just admit
Rob,
it.
It's
Admit
the
it.
reason
Just
why
admit. Just say, yes, you're right, but let me explain why. Go ahead.
Yes, you're right, but let me explain why.
Say that one more time for the audience to hear. Yes, I'm right. That you are too much. You will only speak the word of God while being anonymous.
No, I'm willing to show my face.
Showing
I'll
your
show my
face, it doesn't mean that you're not being anonymous. Showing your
my
face.
God. How is that
Why are you
anonymous?
so? If
How
you're
is that-
so
how is
willing,
that
if
being
you're
anonymous?
claiming that you don't need to be anonymous, then why not just give your name? I'm showing
could
my
I be
face,
anonymous?
but if I didn't give my name, you still wouldn't know who I was. But I'm telling you, my name's Rob Noor. So you're full. You're just
I
lying.
can't be anonymous
You're
and
lying.
show my face.
You're lying.
I'm not lying.
You're lying when you're saying that you don't need anonymity, and your reason is, but
If
I'll
I
show
show
my
my
face.
face,
That's
I'm
still
not
you
anonymous.
still are. That's not true at all. That's not true at all.
That is
You're
true.
still
Okay.
anonymous in the sense that you're not giving your real name.
Oh,
That's
it's
the
just
criticism.
I'm not anonymous, but my name is anonymous.
Right. So you're only
Oh my
willing
God.
to speak the word of God through the cloak of anonymity.
No, I'm not, Rob.
Then why won't you give your real name?
Rob.
Why
It's
won't you
the
give your
reason-
real name? Why
I'm
won't
trying
you?
to get. I'm trying to give you that why. It's the reason I am not. The reason I'm anonymous is the same reason I'm infamous. You have to know the reason why I'm infamous on the internet. It's because I'm the only guy in the whole freaking wide world was able to ever debunk evolution, and that's the reason they want to get rid of me.
You're
If
the
I-
only one, man. You did
Yes,
it.
I'm
You
the
did it.
only
You
one.
got it.
Yes.
You did
Rob,
it,
you don't
man.
understand how
You did
important this is.
Yeah,
Rob, you don't
dude,
understand.
no, I remember. Hey, man, I remember when I was in college and I had to take all
Rob.
these woke courses. All of
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
biology courses had the name Bubblegum Gun. He's the only one. We can't
Yeah,
beat him.
Rob.
Damn, we need to find
No,
his
they
real
can't.
name.
Yes, Rob, they're trying to get rid of me. I know the way
They're trying to get rid of you. And yet
Yes,
you're
they are.
afraid. You're afraid. That's funny. I know a lot of people that spoke the word of God, but they're willing to put their real name out there.
Rob, do you know
They
that
don't have to hide behind anonymity.
Rob, do you know evolution has its origins in Christianity?
Okay.
This is why.
What does that have to
Okay.
do with why you will only say this from a cloak of anonymity?
Okay, if you understand that evolution has its origins in Christianity, this means Christianity can never debunk evolution, right?
Okay, so what's that
Right,
have
right,
anything to do with
wonderful.
the discussion I'm having right now? Why are you only willing to say these
Okay,
great truths under the cloak of anonymity?
I'm not anonymous. People have seen my face.
What's your name?
Rob? It's John. How about you can have my first name there, John?
Why won't you give your last name? It's because you want to have some amount of anonymity, correct?
No, it's because they're trying to kill me, man.
Who's trying to kill you?
Rob,
Who's trying to
evol-
kill you?
Rob, let me lay it down.
Who's trying to kill you?
Rob, let me down. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you.
Just
Let me
okay,
lay-
tell me, and then you could go on your rant about evolution. Who
No,
is it
no,
that's
no,
trying to kill you?
no. Let me go on the rant, and then I'll tell you why it's important. Because you're not gonna listen.
Why don't you tell me who's trying to kill you first?
I'll tell you who's trying to kill me, but you have to listen because I know you're not gonna win.
Why don't you start by telling me who's trying to kill you?
Rob?
I'm just going to boot you off the stream if you're unwilling to answer even the most obvious
look,
questions.
I already won the debate.
I don't care
Well,
if you thought you
you
won the
didn't.
debate. Your opinion is
No,
irrelevant
I
to
did
me.
win.
I'm asking you a question. Who is it
I
that's
did
trying
win
to
the
kill
debate,
you?
Rob. You're
Who is
using
it that's
circular
trying to
logic.
kill you?
Your preferences justify
Who
your
is it that's
preferences.
trying to kill you?
What a great argument there,
Who is it that's trying to kill you?
Rob. The same people who are trying to keep evolution alive.
So who are those people?
You know them.
Who?
Well, okay, Rob. If
Who?
evolution is Rob, let me get that.
You just said I know them. Who? Answer the question.
Okay, Rob, who puts evolution in the books that go to schools?
There's probably people
Who
from
puts it?
there's probably people from this like horrible peer review bullshit.
Government, right? Government, right?
It's not just government, but certainly government has part of it. Yeah.
Okay. Does government kill people?
So the
including
government's trying to kill you.
Rob, yes, because I'm a threat to them.
So the government's trying to kill you.
Why?
But
Yes, why?
they don't know your real name.
I'm sure they're after me.
Okay, well if they already know your real name, what's the harm of saying it here?
Rob, it's that I'm a threat to them. As long as they
So the
can keep me-
government, can you tell me what specific
Rob,
branch
why-
of government? Is it people like in our intel agencies? Is it people through our law enforcement agencies? Who is it in the government that's trying to kill you?
Rob, who puts evolution in the books?
I would say that it's a conflagration of people, right? It's
government
people,
included, right?
The government would be included through the Department
Okay,
of
so-
Education. So it's
so
the
if the
Department of
government-
Education that's trying to kill you?
So if the government has an interest to keep evolution in the books, do they not have an interest to keep people unalive, those who wish to remove evolution from the books?
I don't think that the government's specifically trying to kill some anonymous shit poster online like you, no.
And
And I think if you have risen to the, I think if you have risen, I think if you have risen to that level of threat from the government, then they're probably
can.
already know your name anyways. And so then there would be no need to hide that from a discussion with someone like me.
It's the potential threat that I am.
The potential threat to you. So does the government know your name or not?
And maybe they do.
Okay, then what's the harm in saying it?
Rob, that's the problem. I'm not trying to get killed. I'm not suicidal.
So then you're saying there's a solid chance that the government
Rob.
specific. That I just want to get this clear. Your argument is you're the only person in the world that could debunk evolution, and
I did debunk
the
evolution.
government is out to kill you because you are that unique person in the world that's capable to do this. But this
who put
evil
evolution in the books?
government, this evil government that wants to kill you, they're somehow not powerful enough to know what your real name is.
It's because I'm not a threat yet.
But wait a minute, you just said that you're literally the only person in the world that could
Yes.
debunk. So they don't know that yet.
They know. I'm sure.
So they do know. Then you would be a threat. Don't you think
but-
you just gave the rationale for why? If the government's putting this stuff in our books, wouldn't it be a threat if there's
Rob.
one person in the world that could debunk it all?
Rob, so if the government's putting the evolution in the books, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has an interest to keep evolution in the books.
That's true.
correct?
Then why aren't you a threat right
All
now?
right,
You just said you're
wonderful.
not a threat.
I'm a potential threat.
Okay, but you're not a current threat. But they know you, and they know you're the only person
I don't
in the
know
world.
if they know me. I don't know if they know me.
You said you're infamous.
I'm infamous on the internet.
So people on the internet that would have the ability to, that clearly are interested in protecting the concept of evolution, you're
Including
infamous,
government,
so much
who are
so
known
that
to
you
kill
have
people.
to remain
Yes.
you have to remain anonymous. But they haven't informed the government that's in charge of putting evolution in the books that you exist, and are out there just shaming single-handedly the only person in the world that could debunk evolution.
Rob, if I'm able to get evolution off the books, they have to kill me.
Okay, so then they would know that you're a threat.
Look, if I become a threat to the point that I'm able to get evolution off the books, the government has to come and kill me. They have to silence me.
So then here's where we're at. The government knows, and people know, that you're the only guy in the world that has the potential to beat their arguments on evolution. But they're not targeting you right now because you haven't got the headwinds to get your message out there. Maybe, let me give you some advice. Perhaps instead of shitposting online, if you would put a name to your face and go out there and put on a suit and tie and actually go out and talk as a reasonable person, not talking about stoning the gays, and instead make these great arguments, about debunking evolution, maybe then instead of becoming a potential threat to evolution, you would actually become the thing that brings it down instead of shitposting online.
Rob, your God is for stoning the gays, so I don't see the problem.
That's fine. You
here.
could say my God's for stoning the gays. I don't give a shit.
We're
We're talking about you right now. Why are you only willing to say that under the cloak of anonymity?
I'm not.
Be ye hot or cold, but if you're lukewarm, I'll spat you from my mouth. Why are you only willing to say these truths under the cloak of anonymity?
Rob, I'm not.
It seems what happens is that you're either fearful or wanting to participate in secular society to get the benefits from them that are waged in sin. Because because you either want to participate.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to nuke the Muslims. Yeah, I'm totally trying to kill the Muslims. No, I'm not trying to kill the Muslims.
What the fuck does that have anything to do with what I said? You're currently interested in keeping your position in a secular society much so that you're unwilling to say the truths. You're unwilling to say the truths of God using your real name. Andrew Wilson uses his real name, right?
Andrew Wilson is a cultural Christian. He just wants power.
Okay.
He just wants to rule over
but
the
at
next
least he attaches his real name to his opinions.
At least he sticks to his values. At least he's willing to stone the gays, unlike you.
That might be true. I don't think that is true, actually. I've asked him, he doesn't even think homosexuality should be illegal. So I doubt that he would advocate for stoning them.
That's pretty weak of him, then.
Well, Mr. Anonymous Internet Tough Guy, you could call into his show and tell him he's weak. But at least Andrew Wilson's willing to be public about what he believes. He doesn't have to hide behind the cloak of anonymity. So for someone who's so strong in the word of God, one of God's strongest soldiers, literally the only person in the world that could beat back the demonic forces that are pushing evolution, yet you'll only do so as a shitposter online. You won't do so with your real name. Why is that?
Rob, that's because Andrew Wilson is not a threat to the theory of evolution.
What does that have anything to do with the criticism I just made to you?
Yes,
it doesn't matter if you're a threat or not.
Yes,
you're saying that you are unwilling to advocate openly for the word of God if it comes to possible self-harm to yourself. That sounds like cowardice to me.
Cowardice? I'm not dumb.
That sounds like cowardice.
No, it's not. I'm not stupid.
So you're willing to deny Christ. You're willing to deny God for your own personal safety.
Rob, it's not that I'm denying God. It's that I know how to play the game.
So explain to me how playing the secular game is godlike. Explain to me how that's Christian.
It's not that I'm playing the circular game, Rob.
I didn't say circular. I said secular.
Secular, my bad. It's not that I'm playing the secular game. It's that I have to get this information out before I die. That's well understood, right?
So wouldn't the best way to do that not be to like put your
By
name
not
out there
being
and not
dead.
be an internet shit poster?
Exactly. It's by not being dead.
So your argument is if you gave your name right now, the government would kill you.
No, it's that I could become a potential threat. And if they see me as a potential threat, they will kill me.
If they see you as a potential threat, they're going to find your name anyways. Are you unaware of the surveillance tools
Rob,
that they have?
yes.
You're literally right now, they could probably just through voice analysis be able to find out who you are.
Maybe, Rob, but
Okay.
I'm not trying to go to an early grave.
Okay, so then let me get this straight. You have this mission from God that's so important that you have to
Rob,
deny.
what else would be
you
important?
have to deny in your real life with your real
What
name.
else would be more
Listen,
important,
Let
Rob?
me finish. In your real life, with your real name, in your real job, or whatever you do, you can't discuss this very important mission from God that you have been given the task of being the only
Mission?
person in the world that could
common
debunk
sense, Rob.
evolution.
It's not-
Let me
it's not a
finish.
mission,
Let
it's
me
common
finish.
sense.
The only person in the world that could debunk evolution. You've been given this important mission. And yet so therefore you can't say your name. You can't do any of that because it's so important to get that mission out. Yet you risk coming onto a show like mine with only 150 people watching and putting material out there that could identify you, thereby destroying your mission from God. And for what? To come on
Rob.
and tell me that you think I'm a bad Christian because I don't want to stone gays?
Rob, first of all, what's more important than God? Nothing, right?
Right,
Nothing
so then why are you so fearful
Great.
of the secular world?
Yeah, great, Rob.
Why are you so
this-
fearful? Yep, got it. Why are you
Rob.
so fearful of the secular world?
I'm
Won't
not,
your soul
Rob.
go to heaven anyways? If
I
they
mean,
do
that's why
murder
I'm
you
here,
for
Rob.
speaking the truth, can you show me in the Bible where it says be unwilling to speak the truth if you are worried about secular concerns? Can you show me that?
Look, Rob, I get it. You want
Point
to
to
live in
that
the secular
passage.
world.
Point
you
to the
you want
passage.
to live with the
Is
gays.
that New Testament or Old Testament? What book is that from?
Well, I'm an Old Testament person myself.
Okay, so can you show me in the Old Testament where it says be unwilling to speak the word of God if you are fearful?
Rob,
Can you
that's
show
what
me
I'm
where it
doing.
says that? You just said that
Rob.
the secular world doesn't matter. All that matters is God. So then why
Rob,
be fearful? Won't he protect
what am I
you?
doing? What am I doing right now? If
You're,
not speaking
you're
in-
through cowardice and anonymity. You're willing
Rob,
to spread
I'm
the
the
message
one
of God,
who's
but you're
willing to get canceled.
No, you're
I'm
not.
willing to say,
What's your
stone
name?
the gates.
What's your name?
Rob, I'm going to show my face.
You're showing your face is nothing. Wouldn't that be another tool that the government could use to identify you?
Yes, Rob.
So you're
But
willing
you're
to so you're
worse.
willing to jeopardize your mission from God, where you're the only person in the world that could debunk evolution, and you're willing to come on my show, and you're even willing to show your face, knowing that that would all be but a dead giveaway. That once the government realizes you are on this mission from God, that you're the only person capable of destroying their demonic evolution narrative. You're willing to
Rob.
risk all of that, but you won't give your name. It
Rob,
sounds.
look on-
If I may, can I tell you what's really going on with you? Can I? Would you like to
Sure.
listen?
Well, Rob, I've been
having
nothing
fun
but
toying with
Rob,
you, but-
Rob, I've been doing nothing but listening and just hearing you get triggered.
It's not that I'm
So you-
triggered. It's that I'm
you
dealing
are.
with.
It's
I'm dealing
all-
with
it's
the
all a soy
narcissist.
spill.
I'm dealing with the
you-
narcissist. Is
how
what I'm dealing
ironic.
with. That's
Rob,
what I'm
you're
dealing.
the
I'm dealing
narcissist.
with someone who thinks they're the most important person in the world.
When did I say I was important, Rob? I
You said
God
you're
is
the
important.
only. Is your mission from
I'm-
God? Is your mission from God to
Rob,
end
why am
evolution
I doing
important?
this?
Didn't
Rob,
you
why am
say?
I doing-
Let me finish. Just yes
okay.
or no will suffice. Didn't you say that the most important
Please.
thing is getting your mission from God out there to debunk evolution?
Let me explain. Can I
Yeah,
explain
is
why?
that important or not?
Let me explain.
Is that important or not?
I'm gonna give you a yes or no.
Okay, then give it, and then you could explain.
Yes.
Okay.
Now let me
Sure,
explain.
go ahead and explain.
Okay. Here, I need you to understand the fundamentals of evolution. Evolution is.
I have no
described
interest
as-
in you discussing the fundamentals
It's
of evolution.
important. It's important,
I don't
Rob.
need to listen to you ramble on.
Oh,
No,
you don't want-
I don't.
you're not gonna
I
ramble.
don't need
I'm
it.
not gonna-
That's irrelevant to the
Rob,
discussion we're
oh,
having
you don't
right
wanna
now.
listen.
It's
It's
irrelevant to
relevant.
the discussion. Okay, you got
It's
20
relevant.
seconds. You got 20 seconds to explain why evolution is bullshit. Go ahead.
I'm not gonna. The reason it's important is because when we're taught in evolution is mutation plus time. It's generation. But what is mutations, Rob? They're errors in the DNA code. Now, if we all have DNA mutations over generations, including you, Rob, including your children, what's gonna happen to all the population of the world? They're gonna go kaput, genius. They're all gonna go fucking dead. So what I'm trying to do, it's not for fucking me, dude. I'm trying to save the fucking civilization by stopping a mutational catastrophe. These mutations are gonna steamroll. They're gonna accumulate in the populations of all generations. You can see this in India already. The mutations in India, they're killing their whole civilization. They're turning people retarded. Autism is just a low-level mutation that are popping up. Autism,
Okay,
the 19.
cool.
I'm not.
Okay.
No,
so
Rob,
that,
you don't
okay,
want to
so
listen.
you've explained. So the question I had. So
Rob,
you can see,
this
you
is
can't
important.
Even,
As
so you
important
can,
as it gets. This is
right.
world-ending.
So let's see how we got there. I said, "Isn't what you're doing is very important?" You're like, "I never
It's
said
the
I
most
was
important.
right." So you just said before that the reason we got onto this line of question, you said, "I never said I'm important." And I said, but didn't
It's not
you
about
say,
me, Rob.
Okay, it's not about you, but you're the only, you just outlined why ending the concept of evolution is so important to save the human race. Yes or no? Didn't you just say that?
It's a fact, isn't it, Rob?
Okay, then you said yes, that is important
It's
to
a
save
fact.
the human race. And
Is it not?
didn't you
is
say?
it not, Rob?
Didn't
Is
you
it not?
just say?
Is it
It
not
doesn't
important
matter.
to save
No,
the
I
human?
disagree.
Oh, the human race
disagree.
is not important.
I
The human race
disagree.
is not important.
I disagree.
Oh, you disagree to say the human race is not important.
I'll just mute you. That's not what I'm disagreeing. I disagree with your concept of evolution and what you're saying about
It's
it. But I
fact,
am
Rob.
admitting that you, if you were right about it, then yes, saving the human race would be important, and you're the only person that could do it.
Mutations are detrimental. They kill the human race.
You're changing the subject. What I said was, I'm just going to start muting you. I'm just going to start muting you, right? What the conversation, the direction it was going was, I said, why are you willing, if you're so important to the human race and to God, why are you willing to jeopardize it by putting your face out there and something like me? You said, where did I ever say I'm important? I said, okay, let's break it down into the following steps. I said, let's break it down in the following steps. 1, is the mission important? And you said, oh, blah, 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 and you hemmed and hawed until finally you basically said, yes, it's the most important thing. Then step 2 is, aren't you the only person that could succeed in that mission? Which you've already admitted. Yes. So you are saying that it is your mission to completely save the human race and only you could do it. Which means when you said, I never said I'm important, you're full of shit. That was you lying, which, by the way, is very sinful as well, to get out of the topic that I had, because you don't have an answer to that. So seeing as how you're the only person in the world that could save the human race, and the government's trying to kill you, or they will try to kill you once they find out that you're the only person that could save the human race, why are you willing to jeopardize that by coming on and shitposting and putting your face out there?
I'm not the only person who can save the human race. It's about the information that I bring.
You're the only person that could save the human race on this particular topic?
Rob,
that's what you said. You said you're, do you want to go back? You said you're, quote, the only person that could debunk evolution. You said you're the only one. That's what you said.
No, Rob, hear me out. I'm the only person who has debunked evolution so far.
Okay, so there are others potential out there, but the only one that has successfully done it is you.
Yes.
And the government, and so does the government know that or not? Does the government know that or not? Because that clearly makes you one of the most important people in the world.
Rob, the government knows evolution is bullshit.
It doesn't matter. Do they know that you're the only person that is debunked?
It's very important.
It doesn't matter. Well, for the sake of argument, I'll say, yeah, the government knows, and you're the only person that's been able to debunk it, correct?
If government is pro increasing the amount and mutations in the populations, this means they're against humanity.
Cool. It sounds like you're saying that makes you a very important person.
No.
So you're not important. So the government has this agenda.
That I bring
this government has this agenda to increase mutations that will destroy the human race. And the only person who has successfully argued against it is you. But you're not important.
Rob, is it a fact that mutations will destroy the human race?
No, I don't believe it is.
Oh, you don't think so?
What does it matter? What does it matter?
Rob,
my answer to that question, what does that matter? My answer to that question is I could say, I don't know, for the sake of argument, let's say yes, I agree with everything you're saying. That would make you a very important person. You're the only person in the world that has given the information that could save the human race.
So great. If you agree that that information I'm saying
I don't
is
agree.
correct,
I'm saying for the sake of argument, I could agree.
well, for the sake of argument, for the sake of argument,
now, what you're doing here is, and this is something that narcissists would quite frequently do. You can't argue
Rob,
the point.
I actually
I'm
done the
making a
science,
point. I'm like,
unlike
wow,
you.
you're this very important person that the government's going to try to kill, and you're like, no, I'm not important. And I'm like, but you're the only person that's debunked this. You said, and it's
Rob,
very important information that would save the human race. And you're like, but isn't it? Isn't it very important? Wouldn't it save the human race? Yeah, that's what you're saying. My argument is,
Rob,
yeah, great. You're right. You're the only person who has given this information that could save the human race. So why are you showing your face again on a stream with 150 people knowing the government's trying to kill you?
Rob, I'm only important because I bring the information.
But yet you are important.
Rob,
Yet you
Rob,
are important, which was what my
finish.
argument was.
Rob, let me finish my sentence. If you were to bring the same information that I'm bringing, you would have the same, importance. You are only important because we bring that information, and the information that I'm bringing is correct.
So
And
you've given this information before,
the
correct?
The whole crux of this information.
You've given this information before, correct? That's why you're infamous online, correct?
Yes, the problem is...
Okay, then why haven't other people also given this information?
Because we went over it. Andrew Wilson is an evolutionist. He's not going against...
Okay, that's one person. How many people have you given this information
all
to?
Christians are evolutionists.
Okay, so you've given this information to all Christians, but they're all evolutionists and they want humanity to die.
Where do you think the origins of evolution came from?
No,
from...
I don't give a shit. That's irrelevant to the point we're talking about. You keep going with red herrings. It doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, you're saying you're not an important person. All that's important is the information you have. But you're also admitting
the information that I carry.
Right. I understand the need to interrupt because you know that you're not making a sensible point. So you're saying this information
is important.
Me. You're also saying I'm not strawmanning you. We'll go one by one. You're only allowed to answer with yes, no, or I'll boot you. Ready?
Go ahead.
That's not yes or no. Let's try again. Ready?
Yeah, yes or no? Yes.
Okay. One, is the information you've already given the information that could save humanity?
Yes.
You're the only person that's given that information.
Come again?
You're the only person that has given that information.
No, actually, ask the first question again. I didn't hear it.
The information that you're given is important to save humanity.
Yes.
You're the only person who's given that information.
Given?
You're the person who's discovered that information.
Yes.
You have given this information to other people online.
Yes, but they rejected it.
So no one has accepted it.
No, because they all have an interest in evolution.
So then that would make you a very important person then, right? Because despite the fact that you speak the truth to everyone, there is no one whatsoever that has accepted the information you're giving. Is there one person in the world that has accepted the information you're giving?
Whether they accept my information or not doesn't change the information is correct.
I would agree in theory that's absolutely true. That's not the question, though. The question is, has anyone accepted it?
I would say some. Sunflower, for example.
Sunflower's accepted it. Has Sunflower told anyone about this information?
He's too dumb to grasp the implications of the information I've given him.
So you could only come up with one person that accepts the information that you've given.
Look, it doesn't matter if random people on the internet get it. Right?
Okay, you've only come up with one person that's accepted the information, but you're admitting that they're too dumb to be able to impart this information to other people, correct?
No, they're too dumb to grasp the implications.
Okay, so they understand it, but they don't grasp the implications of it, which leads to them not sharing this information with other people.
Okay. The information is that the information that I'm bringing is that mutations are increasing in the population. These mutations.
This is irrelevant. You could give this information some other time. It's irrelevant. We're talking about.
It's relevant.
What this is a red herring.
It is relevant.
What this is a red
herring.
Not
a red herring.
We're on the part of the conversation when we're talking about your perceived importance, and instead of just saying you've given the rationale why you're one of the most important people in the history of the world, you've given the rationales why you're one of the most important people in the history of the world, which raises the obvious question then, as one of these people that's most important in the history of the world. I'm not trying to strawman you. Isn't that what you're saying?
I'm
Are you the only person that has successfully given information that could literally save the human race?
The only reason I am important in this is because I'm the one who discovered this information.
So what? That would be like saying anything.
The
Any
information is
important
clearly-
historical figure. We could say the only reason Jesus
Rob,
was important was because
this
he was born the
information-
Son of God. Yes, that's true. That's why he is important, but he's clearly
Rob,
important. The why
Rob.
is irrelevant. This would make you as the sole person who discovered and the only person who has imparted and understands the importance of imparting this information. This would make you one of the most
Rob.
important people in the world. You are the only person who was able to discover the information that could save the human race, and you are the only person actively going out and telling people this information.
Rob, what's more important than the human race being alive?
Okay, that's an irrelevant response
It's
to what I just said.
absolutely relevant,
It is
Rob.
not
Absolutely
irrelevant.
relevant.
If I say yes, no,
Right.
and you
You're
say,
only
but
trying to
isn't
say
it
it's
important?
irrelevant because
That's
it
not,
debunks
no,
your whole position.
It doesn't debunk anything in my position. I could say,
Yes, it
you're
does.
right. Watch, I'll agree with everything you say. Go ahead, ask your question.
Okay, Rob, if everything I'm saying is true and my information is relevant, it's the most absolute relevance, yes?
Most important thing in the history of the world. Totally agree.
Oh, great. If you agree it's the most important information the information I bring is the most important thing in the history of humanity,
Yep.
then I'm correct.
Absolutely, you're 100% correct. Oh, by the way,
Great.
that makes you great. That means I'm correct that you're one of the most important people in the history of the world, right?
Only because what? Because of why?
Why does the
What?
only matter? Why does it matter?
why am I-
yes
why
or
am I-
no?
why am I-
Yes or no? Are you one of the most
Why am I-
important people? Is Jesus
Why am I
Christ
important?
is Jesus Christ the most important person in the history of the world?
I'm
asking a different question
yeah,
now.
in
Is
this-
Jesus
mhm.
Christ the most important person in the history of the world?
Jesus Christ?
Yes.
Yes, in the biblical
But only because
text.
he's God's son, right?
Yes.
Okay.
In that sense.
Does that change the fact that he's the most important person?
But why is he important?
Because
Rob?
he's God's
Why?
son. Does that
No,
change the
Rob.
fact? Does that
No,
change
Rob.
the fact? That is why he's important, because he is the
No,
way,
he's
the light,
important
the
because-
truth. That he
yes,
died on the
because of the
cross for our sins, so
salvation.
we can. But he's only that because he's the Son of God.
He's only important because he brings salvation and he's the Son
Yes.
of God, right?
Okay. Does that change
So
the
why
fact?
am I
Does
important?
that change the fact that he is the most important person?
If he wasn't that, he wouldn't be important, right?
Correct.
So the only
But
reason
yet he is that, and he is important. So if someone were to ask you, is Jesus the most important person in the history of the world? And they said, well, only because blah, blah, blah. You would, or if someone asked me that, I would say, yes, but he's still the most important. We could discuss why all day. It doesn't change the fact that, yes,
In
he's
the
the most
Bible.
important. It's the same
In the
thing I'm
Bible.
talking to you. So if we, for example, were having a conversation, if we are alive at the time of Jesus, we said, we must protect this man at all costs. And someone said, why? And I said, because he's the most important person in the history of the world. And someone said, well, that's only because he's the Son of God and brings salvation. Right. How does that change my argument that he must be protected? It doesn't. That's the discussion I'm having with you. You're clearly one of the most important people in the history of the world. So why are you doing things like willing to put your face out there and willing to shitpost and do
Wait,
things
what-
like that? Willing to say things that you know will hamper
Wait.
your very important message on evolution, like we should stone gay people. Why are
So-
you
so
willing
you-
to do that to hamper your? And instead of being able to engage in that discussion,
Mm-hmm.
you just constantly deflect. So I say, aren't you one of the most important people? And
ironic.
you say only because. Well, saying only because, yeah, you're giving us the reason, but you're admitting, yes, you are one of the most important people in the history of the world. Yes or no?
Great. Rob,
Yes
you're
or no?
agreeing
Are
with-
you one of the most? Now we're on like minute 15 of you being unwilling to just answer this question.
Rob.
Are you one of the most important people in the history of the world?
Yes, and you agree,
Yes.
Rob, because
Yes,
I bring
you
the
are.
information.
Yes. So then I'll ask you again. Why are you willing to put your? So the government knows this. Why? So they're willing to kill you, right?
Because of the information that I bring, right?
Okay.
Which
Well, it
you
doesn't
agree-
matter
which you
why.
agree is
The
important.
why.
No,
The
Rob.
why is irrelevant.
The
The
why is
irrelevant.
very important, Rob.
The why
You're trying
is
to make
irrelevant.
The why
It is
irrelevant
irrelevant.
because you're trying to
It
paint
is
me as this
irrelevant.
narcissist,
It
Rob.
is irrelevant.
It's
It is
extremely
absolute-
relevant, Rob.
Last
Because you
chance
know
you're
it
gonna
defeats
give
your
up.
whole
Last
position.
chance you're gonna get. Right? It is irrelevant to the fact that you are one of the most important people, and they're trying to kill you.
Why, Rob? What's the why I
Because
gave?
your salvation, because you discovered this
What?
brilliant theory of evolution
Why-
to save us all.
Why?
That's
What's the why, Rob? That's
Why
not
does the why
Rob.
matter? Why
What's
does it
the why,
matter?
Rob?
Why?
It's crucial to the whole argument.
It is
Robin.
not crucial. It has
and you
nothing
have
to do
straw,
with the argument.
You're trying to straw man.
It has nothing to do.
Yes,
I'm not
yes,
trying
it does.
to straw man.
You're
I
trying to straw
don't
man.
believe.
Then
I
give me
don't
the why,
believe.
Rob.
I don't believe that you're this super
Why,
genius
Rob?
that came up with this thing of evolution and debunked it all and
Give
it's
the why,
crucial
Rob.
to saving all humanity. I don't
What's the
believe
why
it.
again,
But I'm
Rob?
saying, for the sake of argument, what
Rob,
you
what's the
believe
why?
is what you believe is the why is because you discovered
Oh,
the
you
debunking.
think? Are you
of
saying
evolution.
the why is false? Are you
Yes,
saying my why
I'm
is-
absolutely saying you're fucking delusional in your concept of evolution.
So
is
mutations
bullshit.
don't happen, Rob.
Yes,
Mutations don't
mutations
happen.
happen. That doesn't matter. So you're
Okay,
saying
Rob,
that I'm wrong.
if
But wait,
mutations
isn't it
didn't
true
happen,
that people?
and we keep
Wait a
moving
minute.
the
Aren't
population,
people
what the
short?
fuck
Isn't
do you
it
think
true?
happens, you fucking idiot?
Isn't it true that people are short? Isn't that true? Yes or no?
Yes.
Aren't there short?
That's
well,
a
then
bad
clearly.
mutation.
Oh, so you're saying when, so then
you
you're a
think midgets are
narcissist.
okay?
You're a narcissistic fool.
Rob,
that you're
you
a
think midgets
narcissistic
are
fool.
okay?
You're a narcissistic fool that's full of grandeur. That's what you are. You're completely full of shit. You're absolutely fucking delusional. You're hateful, spiteful, and you're a coward, which is probably the worst thing of all. That's what you are. That's absolutely what you are.
I'm a bigot. Yeah, being a midget
I
is
didn't
not
say
good.
you were a bigot. That's not
Yeah,
something.
there's-
Did
Rob,
I
do
say
you think
bigot?
Rob, do you think being a midget's good? You think
Wait
that's
a minute.
good?
Wait. Don't you admit they're short people?
You're talking about midgets, right?
Don't you admit that they're short people?
Yeah, midgets.
Okay, then I'm right. You're a narcissistic, arrogant coward.
Yeah, you think midgets are good.
But wait a
You
minute.
think being-
Wait.
Rob,
You've
do you
just
think being
admitted.
midget's
You've
good?
just admitted short people exist. So therefore, you're a narcissistic, arrogant coward.
Rob, do you think being midgets is good?
It's irrelevant to the question. You've already.
Yes,
admitted short
it's
people
relevant
exist.
to the question,
It is not.
Rob. Stop dodging.
It is not. It is not.
Stop
You've admitted
dodging, Rob.
Short people exist. So
Are being
therefore,
midgets good or bad?
it's irrelevant to the question. I don't have to.
It's
listen to
absolutely
narcissistic
relevant.
cowards
You're
like yourself.
you're dodging
Short people exist.
and straw manning
Do
because
short
you
people
lost the
exist?
argument.
Do short people
Yes,
exist?
midgets.
Then you've
Yes,
proved
midgets
that you're a
exist.
moron. You've proved
Tell
that you're
me,
a moron and nothing you
are
say is
being-
true.
is being a
Short
midget
people
good or
exist.
bad?
Short people
Is
exist.
being a midget?
Short people exist, so you've proven that you're a narcissistic coward moron. So it doesn't matter
Rob,
anything you say.
answer the
Why
question.
would you listen to
Is
someone
being a
who's
midget
clearly
good or
would you
bad?
listen to someone that's been proven to be clearly a narcissistic coward moron?
Rob, being
Would
a
you
midget is
listen to someone
bad.
that's admitted to being a
It's so
narcissistic coward
laughable
moron?
that you can't say
Would
that.
you listen to,
Because it
listen to
defeats your
someone who's
whole
a
position.
narcissistic coward moron? Would you listen to
Rob.
a person that is admitted that they're a narcissistic coward moron?
Well, Rob, I'm listening to you right now.
I haven't admitted that. You have.
Rob, you are.
You admitted. I never
Rob,
admitted that.
is he-
You did.
Rob, are you? Do
You did
think
admit
being
it.
a midget is good?
Would
Is
you
being a
listen
midget
to
good or bad,
someone?
Rob?
Would you listen to someone that's admitted they're a narcissistic coward moron?
Rob, I'm listening to you right
Would
now,
you
man.
listen? I never admitted it. You did. Would you listen to someone who admitted that they're a narcissistic coward
It's
moron?
you, man.
I
You-
never
you think I'm a
admitted it. You
narcissist.
did. Would you listen to someone who
When
admitted they're a narcissistic
when did I say
coward
I was a
moron?
narcissist? When
You
did I say I
admitted
was a
it.
narcissist?
Didn't you admit that there are short people?
Rob, I said being.
Didn't you
being a
admit that
midget
there are
is bad.
short people? Didn't you admit short people exist?
Being a midget is bad.
Didn't you admit
agree,
that
yes or
short
no?
people exist?
Being a midget
Didn't
is
you
bad.
admit
yes
that
or
short
no?
people exist?
I admit it. That being.
Okay, so then you admit that you're a narcissistic coward moron. There you go. That's as stupid as you saying, well, Rob, clearly I'm right about being the salvation of the human race because I'm the only person that's discovered the fact that I could debunk evolution because mutations exist. And if you admit mutations exist, that means you have to agree with everything I'm saying. No, admitting that something that obviously exists doesn't prove that your entire theory of, well, what's happening is the government has pushed the theory of evolution because they want to forge mutations and then they know those mutations will ultimately destroy the human race and therefore we have to say mutations exist only to destroy the human race, that's why they're there, and evolution therefore can't be true. No, none of that is proven just because of the fact that, quote, mutations exist. Just as unreasonable as it would be for me to say, well, if you admit short people exist, then that means all of my arguments are correct. That's the stupidity. The truth is, and because you're unwilling to have a conversation, the truth is the reason that there are so many contradictions what you're saying, that you're saying, I speak the word of God, but you're a coward and unwilling to put your name to it. But then at the same time, you're saying the reason I won't do that is because the government would be out to kill me. But then you have to deny when I say, oh, why? Well, because I'm so important. And I say, but if you're so important, why would you put your face out there? Wouldn't the government already know your name? And you're like, well, they don't know now. But the reason there's so many contradictions to that is because as follows, because you're a fucking coward. That's why. Because you're a narcissist. You're someone who thinks they're way smarter than they actually are. You're someone that's pushing absolute bullshit tripe that wants to sound like an edgelord online. And you're someone that knows that if you came out with your beliefs of things like, I want to stone gay people and I'm one of the most important people in the history of the world because I've single-handedly debunked evolution, you would be laughed at in your real life. You would be laughed at in your place of employment. You would be embarrassment to those around you. You know that, and you're fearful of those things because you're not strong in your convictions. And so that's why you have seemingly all these contradictory things, and you have to hide behind a cloak of anonymity. That's what it's about. Because you're too much of a fucking coward to go out there and say, my name's Jim Smith, this is my place of employment, and you're fucking right, we should stone all gay people. Because you're a fucking coward. You're like the neo-Nazi that wants to march, or the Antifa person that wants to march with the mask on their face. You're a fucking coward. And that's not something that's very godlike. That's not a trait that's to be identified with. And other people might have forms of cowardice. You may claim I'm a coward because I won't fully embrace what you interpret as the word of God. And that's fine. But at least I'm putting my name and beliefs out there. Not you, though. Not you. You'll be a tough guy that criticizes other people and say, I'm the man. I'm brave. I'm putting out the real word of God. That's what I'm doing. I'm one of the most important people in the history of the world. But I can't use my real name. I can't. Because, I'm fearful because the government's out to get me. You're fucking delusional. That's what you are. You're absolutely delusional. Okay, we'll give you a chance to respond.
Rob, what causes cancer?
I don't know. Why don't you tell us? Evolution?
Mutations.
Cool.
What causes people to be midgets?
I don't know. Go
Mutations.
Okay.
What causes autism?
I don't know. Go for it.
Mutations.
What causes
You're starting to see a
mutations?
pattern here?
What
You're starting to
causes
see a pattern?
mutations? What causes mutations?
Freaking being out in the sun too much.
Oh.
Eating the wrong
So
thing.
being out in the sun too much is what's causing
Rob,
cancer.
it's the problem is that these mutations are getting passed on and are accumulating.
Yep.
Great.
Gotcha. Hey man, thanks for calling. I wish you extreme.
Rob, you're freaking.
I wish you extreme good luck
folded,
as
man.
one of the most important people in the history of
Rob,
the world.
you got folded because you have no justification for your worldview. Oh, my preferences
for
for just
people in the history of the world. I really wish you well. I really do. And it's a shame that you are infamous because the government's out to get you and it's going to kill you, trying to kill you, and so you can't use your real name and everything. Thanks so much for calling in. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Keep drinking that sodium. That's
we'll
soy.
see.
All right.
There you have it. Now, before he got into the illusions of grandeur about being one of the most important people in the history of the world, etc., now, I don't believe even if the New Testament says that being a homosexual is a sin, that we ought to live in a society where the government stones gay people. No, I don't believe that. Now remember, does everyone see why sometimes I have a short fuse with people like this? We started with Manar and wanted to call in and say that we need a government that is ran by the church, a theocracy, whichever church is most important. Then we had Enigma call in and sort of try to give points to that. And then that led to Bubblegum Gun, literally one of the most important people in the history of the earth. Literally one of the most important, infamous, that thinks we should stone gay people to death and that mutations exist. And so the theory of evolution... Well, Blue Juju, that's true, and I'm willing to talk. That's why I like talking to people like Andrew Wilson and stuff. There's truth as to my points of religion. I'm willing to talk about that. But not with the most important person in the history of the world that has found the key to unlocking why evolution's a conspiracy by the government to kill us all. Yes, it is true. I don't consider myself to be a student of the Bible much at all. I call myself a bad Christian all the time. I am aware that being gay is, by almost all readings of the Bible, a sin. Like premarital sex would also be a sin. Other forms of sex that aren't with your wife for procreation, like oral sex and things like that, would be a sin. I've committed some of those sins myself. I lived with my wife before we were married, for example. But there is a certain arbitrariness to how I practice my religion. I'll fully admit that. Absolutely fully do. That's absolutely true. I believe that Jesus is the Son of God and that I should aspire to be like him as much as possible. But I fail all the time. I don't have illusions of grandeur and pride like Bubblegum Gun, who's supposedly... I thought pride was a sin. But Bubblegum Gun's one of the most important people in the history of the world. So that's where I come. That's my principle of saying, look, I don't have to, and I'll tell you right now, I go further, and this pisses off people. Yeah, I have friends that are gay. No, I don't give a shit. Yes, they're awesome people. I don't give a shit as long as it's a consensual relationship. I don't give a shit who you're having sex with. Consensual adult. I don't think that children can consent. Bubblegum Gun, you're still obviously free to participate. But I don't have to read your comments anymore. But it gets frustrating because now I've done an hour and a half show and I had a bunch of shit to talk about. And again, I constantly get frustrated because aren't there a lot of people... Okay, there aren't a lot of people talking like Bubblegum Gun there because he's literally the only person in the world that's discovered this information and shares it. Yeah, Lester Diamonds, I can't claim that I know that the New Testament advocating stoning gays. But it's a source of frustration to me because I know I do have a reasonable relationship with the Crucible, and I have a lot of fans that are also fans of the Crucible, and a lot of them tend to be far more conservative religiously than me. I get that. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Jesus in the chat. I assume you're not the Jesus, but it's not something that I talk about all that much. And maybe that makes me a bad Christian, and that's fine. But constantly what I find is I'm brought into those conversations over and over and over again when I open up dialogues. It's like the 19th Amendment shit. Every time there's a 25% chance every call-in show I get, there's going to be a huge debate about whether or not women should have the right to vote. That's just the nature of it. There's going to be people that want to dive in to religion now. I'm going to get this discussion all the time. All the time. I'm going to get this discussion with like, but wait a minute. You don't think that our church should create the laws? That's the nature of the beast. And I'll try to respectfully have those conversations when possible with people that are in the realm of sort of reasonability. Yeah, the 19th's not going to be repealed. So, I don't know. But I feel like there was a lot to talk about today. And we spent our time talking. I mean, I guess we did talk to the most important man in the world. So that's some. Good God. Anyways, the Hawk Tuah girl, right? She scammed a bunch of people out of money. Oh, allegedly. I don't mind if people are certainly justified in calling me out of my lack of knowledge of Christianity. I was an atheist at one point. I went to a Pentecostal church that I thought was absolutely batshit crazy. They spoke in tongues and stuff. I thought they were really bad, spiteful people. And it really colored wrong so much of what Christianity meant to me. And I was very jaded about it. And then what brought me back were people that I knew that were good Christians, not talking to me, but living their life in a way that I found was the right way to live. Blue Juju, thanks so much, man, for the 20 gifted memberships. And a reminder to the people on Twitch, until I change it back, if I do, I can't see if you're subscribing or following or anything on Twitch. So let me know in the chat if you do. And I'll give you a shout out. Thanks so much, Blue Juju. That's really cool. But it's not easy. It's not easy talking to an audience, telling them things that you know that they don't agree with. When I ran for Congress in District 12, probably the most conservative district in Pennsylvania, if not one of the most, there were conferees. It was a special election. So instead of a primary, you had conferees. So there was only 215 people, 212 people whose votes mattered. That was it. They were elected as conferees, and then they got to vote, and that's who decided. So I tried to talk to all 212 of those conferees and tell them who I was and what I believe politically. And sometimes you would call someone that's a Republican conferee in the most conservative district, and you would call them, and I'd say, hey, what's your most important issue? Do you have any questions for me? And they would say, what are your feelings on gay marriage? Now, I'm smart enough to know what that person wants to hear. I know this. If you're saying that that's the most important issue to you, and you're a Republican in the most conservative district, there's a 95% chance that you're like, I want this guy to be against gay marriage. And I would tell them, actually, I think that the government shouldn't be allowed to discriminate consenting adults based on biological characteristic like that. Yeah, I will go to Charleroi. I've been to Charleroi before, but I haven't gone there to stream. But I would go there to stream. So, I mean, take that for what you will. If you choose to think that I'm a heathen and, I'm not like Bubblegum Gun, one of the most important people in the history of the world, so be it. But, all right, Adam Dole wants to call in. Why not? And Enigma's back. Let me grab my... Well, my headset's on backwards. What's up, Adam? Can you hear me?
Hey.
Hey, what's up?
Well, I'm sorry if this is a bit late, but I want to try to give the best possible steel man for what I view as the theocrat position.
Sure. Let's talk religion again. Why not? All right, have at her.
All right, well, see, this isn't actually about religion. This is about how government and law works more than anything.
Okay.
So the basic claim I'm going to make is, it's two claims. One is that church and state will necessarily come into conflict in terms of law. And the second claim is when that conflict happens, one or the other has to win out.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for instance, if there are probably going to be cases, necessarily going to be some case in which a religious group is going to do something that the state will be involved with in some way. They'll have a conflict with the state. Then the question is, well, who do you support within the context of that conflict? Like,
sure.
As an example, the Amish were against putting these big orange, basically markers on the back of their horse-drawn carriages to avoid getting hit by cars. They didn't want to do that because they thought it was garish.
Absolutely true. I live amongst the Amish. That's absolutely true. Yes.
Yeah. So my claim is separate. Well, the main point of this argument is to say separation between church and state is impossible because you are either going to have the state is either going to submit itself to the rules of the church or declare itself as above the church in terms of authority.
Well, yes, but it's sort of a technically semantic argument in that you understand that's not what they're referring to specifically when they say separation of church and state. You're right. Inevitably, you could make that argument about any group. You could say that any group would be involved. For example, I could say, I don't know. It's hard to come up like a political group, a religious group, political group, ethnic group, whatever. Any potential grouping of people you could come up with will never be separated from state because there's always a possibility that they'll want things and one will supersede the other. So that could be your men's group. You belong to an Eagles club. Well, there's no separation of the Eagles club and the state because inevitably, if the Eagles club comes to a decision on doing something that runs afoul of what the state has said is the law, then one will have to you'll have to favor one over the other, correct? So
yeah,
I do agree with you, but when
Absolutely.
the idea of separation of church and state as is what's commonly talked about is the idea that the state should not be making laws as the church. So the church shouldn't, the Pope shouldn't be the president, right? That's sort of the idea of what's being talked about. But I agree with you. Sure, go.
I just want to understand this position. Mm-hmm. So is the position merely limited to the claim that like religious authorities like a priest shouldn't hold political office?
No, that's not the claim at all. In fact,
right.
I can understand why you'd think that, because I'm not being clear on what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the state should not be a body of the church. Individuals that hold positions within the church are free to run in the state, but the state itself, the legislator, the laws shouldn't be that of the church. Individuals within it could run. So it's sort of complicated, but what that would mean is that, like, they're ultimately suggesting, even though it's never really outlined, no one really outlines that in the Constitution, the separation of church and state. It's sort of a misnomer, right? But basically, the people that are advocating for this, what they're saying is, like, we don't want, well, the church, you have the right to free speech. That's something that the Founding Fathers thought were important. They put in the Bill of Rights. But the Protestant church says, no, you don't have the right to criticize my pastor. And so, therefore, you don't have it's now enshrined in law. You can't pastor, Jermil there. You can't criticize Pastor Jermil. We made a law that says that, because that's what their specific church says, and so we're going to adhere to that, because that church doctrine comes above the doctrine of law, right? That's what they're trying to avoid. Now, to go further, because it's not specifically outlined, this is where people get it wrong the other way, which is that therefore none of the morality that comes from religion underpinned any of the rights or the laws that our creators, our founding fathers, were so big on. And that's just not true, right? Many of the concepts that come, for example, almost exclusively from Christianity, do underpin a lot of what the founding fathers were talking about and what they advocated for. So, it does become to, I guess I'm not someone who's bigly screaming about the separation of church and state. I'm talking about on specific issues. I don't think that when in these debates that I'm having, where you're literally talking to theocrats that are like, we should literally get out every politician in this country, they shouldn't exist, and instead your holy man is the arbiter. They create the laws, and those laws need to be beholden to. And which holy man creates the laws? Well, the holy man that the majority of the people say is the one that they believe. And so,
well, I'm not supporting Manara's position. I think that
right. And I'm not accusing you of that. But
to be nice.
Yes, I understand, but I think that's sort of where I'm coming from. I'm not as persuaded by the arguments where people are like, oh, complete separation of church and state, and therefore, when the Catholic charities that get, tax exemption say, we don't want to provide morning after pills, bullshit, they should have to. I don't agree with that. I think that is a misapplication of the understanding of the concept of separation of church and state.
Okay, I want to present a hypothetical because I'm still not entirely sure what you mean. Mm-hmm. So hypothetically, you have a country, the entire country is Catholic, the vast majority, and all the politicians are Catholic, but none of them hold any actual church position as part of the hierarchy. Mm-hmm. However, they also and the state is not understood in this Catholic system as being part of the church in any way. Mm-hmm. However, the legislature, which is entirely made up of Catholics, they pass the entirety of Catholic canon law into their legal system. Mm-hmm. Is this state under this conception, are they maintaining your view of separation of church and state? If not, why not?
I guess it would depend on their rationale for the passing of these laws. So, for example, if they would enshrine into law the practice of Lent, right? And you were like, well, why? And they said, well, here's why. Because eating too much red meat is bad, and so we need to take a break from it, blah, 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 for people's health. That wouldn't be passing a law for religious reasons. So that would still be an acceptable... It wouldn't be church working with state. But if they said, because the Lord tells us then that would not be a separation of church and state. Does that make sense?
Wait. I guess, but that just leads to a whole nother question, which is, okay, you have a congressman who votes to ban murder, and the reason, his sole reason for wanting to ban murder is he reads the Ten Commandments and it says murder is bad. Is that not separation of church and state in your view, merely because of the internal motivation of the person? Is that the only reason?
I think an individual politician is allowed to vote their conscience based on religions, but if the reason for the law that was given and as written was, well, we're doing this just because the Lord says so, that it wouldn't be a violation, that it wouldn't be a separation of church and state. What do you think? What do you think of me? Because what you've said, there are certainly threshold criticisms with my argument, but the criticism to your suggestion of church and state's always going to be a bigger criticism, in my opinion, which is you've given a definition that literally encompasses everything. And so therefore the definition is basically worthless.
No, it isn't worthless. I would say that that you could apply anything to it, and I think that the state, insofar as law applies, does in fact reach into every aspect of society.
Correct.
So to say that there's a separation between any of these aspects of society and the state, I think is wrong.
Well, that's fine. So then you're criticizing a term that I haven't used: separation of church and state.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I thought that was implied by a lot of your
the
claims.
Implication, but the term, right? Again, but the term, like in how you're defining it, isn't. I'm giving specific reasons. I don't want Sharia law. I don't want if 51% of people say, we don't think women should be allowed to walk down the street unaccompanied with a man because our holy book says so. I say screw that. No. I say that we should instead prioritize a system of government that allows free expression and autonomy of people as much as possible until it directly physically harms another person. And then we can have discussions on what does direct physical harm mean, what are the scales of that, etc. And again, it'll be difficult. Those are threshold arguments to be had. But that's what I'm talking about and what you would say is the implication of the separation of church and state. If the church says murder is bad, and we have laws that say murder is bad, and that there are people that say, I think murder is bad because God tells me murder is bad, I guess I'm okay with that.
Okay. So then the next, I can work with that. So then I would say that this just shows that you have a value that is higher than your particular religious values, at least in as far as statecraft goes.
Statecraft, yes. So what I think is moral for myself and how I should live my own life is irrelevant to what's legal or not. For example, if tomorrow adultery became adultery is not a good example. Sexual assault became legal. I would still think that's immoral to engage in through my relationship with God, etc. Right? So the legality is irrelevant. The question is, as a country that's going to the foundation of our country, it was implicit that there were people fleeing religious persecution and there would be people engaged in different religious practices. And so we had this idea of like, well, how do we ensure that people should be allowed to have different religious practice or different beliefs, etc.? And so they came up with sort of concepts of things like, well, free speech. You should have the right to, everyone should have the right to say what they want. And the worship is how they see fit. And the government doesn't have the right to establish sort of a national religious or prohibit any religions, which I think is all in the First Amendment. Or you have the right to self-defense, right, which is enshrined. Or you have the right to privacy. Like all of these things that were outlined, right, like that was all part of all of that was the understanding that there would be people with different religious practices that would be practicing that, right? And so that's the concept that I'm coming from. I believe that that is how the state should formulate, but that doesn't mean that that's my highest moral calling, that I think the state is the most moral actor or that it ought to be. I think that it necessarily, because there are so many differences of people and by the way that this country was created and how it exists inevitably now, that we're not just going to get a monolithic people that all have the same religion, that we have to have concepts to ensure that we could have sort of a coexistence with each other that allows certain things that maybe my religion says it's a sin to be a homosexual, but it's still legal to be a homosexual because we understand. That doesn't change, that doesn't mean that I think that the state is more moral than my religion. It's just that's how the state has to exist. And I can control myself and what I'm doing morally, but the state shouldn't enforce that on other people.
Okay, I can sort of see where you're coming from. What you're saying is the morality only applies insofar as the individual, unless in favor of allowing individuals to pursue their individual ideals. I'm doing something else right now. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if the way. I guess I think we're on the same page.
I formulated it very poorly. I'm sorry.
No. I'm not wording it well myself. It's difficult concepts. It really is, right? But it's just like, would you agree? Like, let's say at the founding of the country, there's 50,000 people that are coming, and they're like, okay, we're all fleeing persecution, whether it be political, economic, religious, and the Quakers want to practice how they want, and the Catholics want to practice how they want, and the Lutherans want to practice how they want, and here's some, people that are Amish, and they want to, or they're atheists, and they don't want to practice at all. How can we ensure that all of us have the right to these beliefs? And they're like, well, let's enshrine some things that says we all have the right to say what we want. Right? We all have the right to free speech, and we have the right to worship how we want, and we have the right, and until it starts infringing on other people, we have the right to do all of this stuff. And the government doesn't have the right to tell us we don't. Now, you might say, from the perspective of that Catholic, they might say, but Christ is Lord. It should be enshrined in law that Christ is Lord. That person's going to burn in hell because they don't believe Christ isn't Lord, and therefore, why should we allow them to be sinful? Why shouldn't we say, no, you can't be sinful? Why shouldn't we try that in law? It's not to say that saying, okay, we understand that we can't have a system of government like that person should be allowed to sin. They should be allowed to blaspheme. They should be allowed to do that, even though it's a sin. They should be allowed. That doesn't mean that I believe that the state is higher morally than what my personal religious beliefs are, how I ought to act. And there's, like, this plays out, and, like, I guess I would ask you straight up, do you disagree with that? Would you prefer a system where religion was creating all the laws?
I would prefer a country where all of the legal system is influenced by my particular religion, yes.
But that's a different question. That's a different question. Influenced by versus creating the laws exclusively is different, right? So, for example, do you think that anything that's a sin should be illegal?
Not anything.
Okay, so should it be legal to be a homosexual?
I haven't fully thought about. I'm honestly not sure. I'm sort of torn on that issue personally.
Without getting into the specifics, what would be in general then? What would be the differentiating factor for what should be a sin but should be legal versus what is a sin and should be illegal? For you, what would be the values that you would be weighing to try to make those sort of decisions?
I don't know. I actually, like, in case you can't tell, I'm very, I think very high concept.
Yeah, I tell. I'm very much just a redneck.
I kind of break down when you get to specifics, and I admit that readily.
Well, that's fine. I think we maybe think it's the same when I talk to someone like Andrew Wilson and them. They're more philosophical thinkers than me. I'm more just like looking at shit on the ground in my day-to-day life, right? I'm so worried about what a fuck up I am and how I need to improve my life, my relationship, being a father and a husband. Those are the things that I prioritize. But that's literally, I'm not really philosophical about it. I'm like, I need to stop. I need to earn more money. I need to work more around the house. I need to pay more attention to my son. Like, that's tangible shit that I can see on a daily basis. That doesn't mean that the high-minded approach is wrong. I'm not saying that. It's just people think about things in a different way. But the point that I'm trying to
Asking,
even when I talk to like
questions is completely fair.
yeah, even
Like
when
I'm not putting on you.
yeah, even when
Believe
I
me.
talk to Andrew, right? Like, it's a difficult proposition. I don't understand. Like, Andrew, as I said to the previous caller, Andrew's like, no, it shouldn't be against the law to be homosexual. I was like, do you think we should bring sodomy laws back? And I believe he said no. Now, he's against gay marriage. He's against the promotion of homosexuality, but he wouldn't say that it should necessarily be illegal, right? So he doesn't have like a police force that's like, trolling the internet to see if someone said something gay, and then like in the UK, right, where they're trolling, oh, that person made a dirty joke, they said something that's a meme, and the police knock on their door, you're under arrest for this post you made on Facebook. Like, Andrew's not suggesting that.
Well, I have actually a question about this. Wasn't it the case that for the majority of American history we did have anti-sodomy laws?
There were, in certain areas there were, yes.
Okay.
But I couldn't tell you much about. I by no means am I a historical expert on them, but yes, they existed.
Well, then I'd say that at the very least it's certainly not against. Well, there's this article I read on the Mises Institute a while back. It was by Ryan Turnipseed. It was about the history of the First Amendment, mm-hmm. and or more particularly the incorporation of amendments in relation to the 14th Amendment.
Okay.
And his claim was that the sort of modern conception of freedom that we have in the U.S. is a very new phenomenon that did not previously exist. Like, for the incorporation of the First Amendment changed from Congress can't influence how different states Congress can't change how states do religious laws to states cannot interfere with individuals doing religious actions. So it seems like, at least assuming his claims are true, and I haven't verified them, mm-hmm. then that would mean that, historically speaking, America did have strong, on the state level, strong religious laws in place that existed at least up until, like, I believe it was the early 19...
I am well aware that our concept of the First Amendment has definitely broadened over time. And what that means. There are things that historically, maybe even criticisms of the government, etc., that may have been treated harsher when we were fighting the Revolution War, the War of 1812, etc., the Civil War, than we see now. It's one of the arguments I had about the January 6th stuff and sort of the Section 3 of the... Oh, shit. I can't even remember. What amendment? Is it Section 3 of the 14th, right, where it talks specifically about the...
Insurrection?
Yes, right? Like, it's definitely changed the way we apply that, because it's certainly true in the immediate aftermath of the writing of that, which was the aftermath of the Civil War, they viewed that much more seriously. The reason that people that were protesting the Vietnam War, that were literally by the letter of the law of how some of those prosecutions happened in the 1800s, weren't prosecuted because our understanding of things have changed and what we allow with the First Amendment, etc. So to say historically, were there sodomy laws? I'll say this in my very limiting understanding of it. Yes. And was the federal government okay with states making sodomy laws? Yeah, they probably were. Doesn't mean I agree with it or think that it should occur. I don't. I think that it's absurd. I think that I don't want to live in a country where the government is investigating adults for consensual relationships and outlawing practices based on your sexual orientation. I don't want that. I think that's a terrible idea. That's how
also,
I feel.
I did actually find the article. It's called "Destroying Liberty Through State Protection: The First Amendment" by Ryan Turnipseed on the Mises Institute website.
It might be something interesting. If you put the link in my Discord, I don't know if you well, clearly you're on my Discord now. I would enjoy reading that. I would. I think that's something. But yes, I think that probably again, I'm no historical expert, but I think that my understanding of things probably tends to say that article is probably true, that our understanding of the First Amendment has definitely changed, and the court's interpretations of it's definitely changed over the course of the history of our country. But again, regardless of that, the question still becomes, what ought it be? Not what was it, what ought it be? And I don't think that we ought to have a system that makes homosexuality illegal, even if my religion says that it's a sin. I don't think it should be illegal. I don't think blaspheming should be illegal, even if it's a sin. It's serious sin. Blaspheming is a serious sin. I don't think it should be illegal.
Well, I'm see now my view, I guess, is different. Well, obviously, in the U.S. we've got all these separate states, which were, at least in the founding of the country, meant, well, what the fucking term state means, supposed to be separately sovereign. Obviously, that's not the case anymore, especially not after the Civil War. Because, well, you're not sovereign if you can't secede. My understanding of how things worked back then is that you had these separate states which could pass separate laws regarding their own religious practices, and the federal government really couldn't do anything about it. And that changed with the 14th Amendment, post-Civil War, obviously, again. And I like that system. I like the idea.
I don't. So in practice, then, you would say you would like if Utah said it's illegal to be gay here. You would like that.
Yes.
I think that's a terrible idea. So a gay couple, says, "Hey, we're going to visit my uncle in Utah," and they post on Facebook picture of them, at their house in California, and the police in Utah see that and say, "Oh boy, as soon as they cross the border in our state, you're under arrest."
Yeah, I think that having so the benefits of this system would be you have separate sets of law for separate groups of people. Like, obviously, California doesn't want to be governed the same way that Alabama does.
I understand. No, I understand the concept of federalism, and I agree with it in principle. But I think that the understanding of how the First Amendment should be interpreted, your right to free association, free expression, would also apply to the people you choose to be intimate with, as long as they're consenting adults. And just like I don't think, for example, I could believe in the concept of federalism, and maybe you do, but if California says you're not allowed to own a gun here, and you drive into California, and even if you don't have that gun on you, they arrest you because they say, "We've seen videos of you online owning a gun and showing the gun you own, so you're under arrest. Our law says you can't own a gun." You would say that's okay?
Well, that's obviously different because it's whether or not you own the gun in California.
No.
Like,
what if California passes? Not if California. Well, you're
within...
assuming what the law says. In this hypothetical situation, the law says no, owning a gun. Period. It says any individual that owns a gun, doesn't have to be in California, has committed a crime, punishable by a year in jail. I'll answer for you. I'll answer for the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, the government would say, no, they can't do that, because the Second Amendment enshrines everyone's right to own a firearm. And so the states may not pass a law that violates the federal Constitution. And the Constitution says you have a right to own the gun. So they can't do that. Right? You would agree with that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Even within that understanding. But yeah. I'm trying to remember the exact wording. So shall not be infringed implies state and federal.
Correct.
But there's a very clear difference between that and what it says in the First Amendment, which at least my dumb non-lawyer reading implies that it's not state level, it's only federal level.
I disagree. And if that's the case, then let's take homosexuality out of it. So if the state of then you would think that the state of California should be allowed to arrest you if you're a MAGA voter.
I don't really see why not.
That's the system you want?
Their ability to implement law like that, I wouldn't really see an issue with on its face.
So if California literally says any Trump voter, it's illegal to be a Trump voter, and you cross the border into the state of California, you would say, yeah, that's the way it ought to be. They should be allowed to arrest you.
Well, obviously, I don't like the specific law.
Well, of course.
I'll just make that clear.
Yes. If you were a citizen of California, you would vote against that. Right. But yes. But you think they should have the right.
Well, and similarly, I would be against the law in the other direction. I don't really think.
Sure, of course. But we could see, particularly in a lot of these deep blue states, how ridiculous things could get quite quickly, right? And I don't think they should have the right to block me up because I make social media posts saying that I'm voting for Trump just because I happen to have to drive through their state for whatever reason. California's on the edge of the state, but what if it was, what if it was a state that you had to go? Well, I have to drive around Nebraska.
Utah
now
again,
right? You're exactly. I think that's a really bad system. I don't think. I think there are fundamental things that the government should not have the right to infringe on, but I also believe that yes, there should be things that aren't expressly outlined in the Constitution or that can't be interpreted from the things outlined in the Constitution quite clearly, that yes, it should be up to the state level, such as marijuana. Marijuana isn't in the Constitution, so it should be up to each state to decide whether or not it's legal to smoke marijuana. I don't have a problem with that.
But hold on. This actually, this argument chops the other way too, because by this you would have to say that widespread internet, adult I don't know how much I'm allowed to say on YouTube. Adult content should be allowed by these states because that's free speech according to the Supreme Court.
It's not. Well, okay, let's be clear. Yes, adult content is speech according to some of the court, but I thought you were going to say like heinous stuff with like abuse of children and etc. Right?
Yes. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about widespread consenting.
So what could happen is then the argument becomes, is this speech? Right? That's the argument. And if it is argued and the Supreme Court rules that pornographic material is speech, then yes, there are circumstances where that should be allowed in any state, right? Now, there's questions on being allowed is one thing. So I'm allowed to own pornography. Am I allowed to distribute it, right? Those might become different questions. And there's already limits on pornography as speech in the sense that, like, you can't have children in it. You can't distribute it to children, right? You understand that. But yes, in general, you're right. One of the problems with this would be if a state like Georgia says we want to ban pornography and make its possession illegal, and I happen to be driving through Georgia with a Playboy magazine in my car, yeah, they can't arrest me. That's true. But I prefer that system, even with its flaws, than the other direction.
Well, the thing I would say is that the flaws in your system seem evident and already exist. Whereas historically, I don't believe there's ever been a case, even prior to the 14th Amendment, where it was illegal to support, say, a politician in the U.S.
Well, that's because we have free speech. Okay, but we have, things change, right? Right? So we can see how much more radical it's getting. Historically, we didn't have FISA warrants being issued against the President of the United States, him being called a fascist, the FBI having the largest manhunt in history to go after anyone who was just in attendance at January 6th, their bank information being disclosed, them being debanked, looking into sort of where they bought firearms, if they ever had firearm possessions, firearm manufacturers being sued and targeted legally because criminals use them, automobile manufacturers being sued because they're told that they're too easy to steal, etc. So just because something hadn't been done historically doesn't mean the more and more radical we get and the more and more enclaves that we get, that there wouldn't be people that would take advantage of that. For example, let's take an example that I think would be grotesque, but could easily happen. Anyone who denies vaccines goes to prison for 5 years. Could you see a state passing that law if they were allowed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think they should be totally allowed. Yeah.
I disagree. I think you have free speech. You should have the right to be able to deny vaccines.
Hold on, but that isn't even a question of speech. That's a question of public health.
No, that's a question of speech.
Okay, well that's an odd
It doesn't matter
claim.
what my expertise or if I'm right or wrong. I should be allowed to condemn vaccines.
Wait, so it's about speech against vaccines, not against getting the vaccines.
Both, but yes. Isn't that the same thing? If I'm saying don't take that vaccine, if I say vaccines will kill you, Is that substantively different than I say, don't take that vaccine, it will kill you?
There's a big difference between privately making a decision to not get a vaccine and not advertising it, or like getting a vaccine and telling nobody else to get the vaccine.
Oh,
Like
right,
those are
but
different things.
I'm talking about it in the concepts of you're being public. So you publicly, should a state, can you envision a state where they would say, if you publicly decrying the effects of vaccines or saying they're dangerous is punishable by law? Could you see a state that would do that?
Yes,
Okay.
that's a realistic hypothetical, and I
Yes.
would say yes, they could do that, and I don't really have any issue with a state doing
Well,
that.
I do, and I think that it would quickly lead to the dissolution of the United States of America. That would be a far easier example of how we would literally get to a civil war. That would just be insane. That's just crazy. We can't have a system like that. You can't have a system where it's so, because then what would happen is you would quite literally, then you would have red states at that point that would do all the worst things that you can imagine. They would say, okay, if you're going to say that, then we're going to say it's illegal to promote anything LGBT. Any gay people get arrested. And then the blue states are going to say, okay, then we're going to say it's illegal to be MAGA. And that's exactly the tit for tat that you would see. And you would have each state, you would have to like map out which states that you legally, just based on things you've said online, would be allowed to enter. It would be an insane system.
Well, so hold on. Within the system you lined out, you're saying that it would be illegal to have said in the past in a different state something?
Yes. Why wouldn't
Well,
it?
that well, yeah, because that's not ever been the case in U.S. history in terms of.
True. That's not true at all. For example,
Okay. Can you provide an example?
wait. Well, right, because we have a First Amendment, so but like you could easily see. Look at
No,
like
I'm
look
talking
at
about
countries.
pre-14th Amendment. I'm talking about the pre-14th Amendment.
But let's look
understanding of the
at
First
countries that don't have a First Amendment. If you're a citizen of the UK and you're vacationing in the United States and you post on Facebook, these damn Muslim immigrants are ruining our country, and you go back to the UK, can you be arrested?
I think so.
Why would that be any different here?
Okay, yeah, I can see your point in that case then.
I mean, if we're talking about California or some deep blue state passing the worst rules on things like vaccine disinformation, do you really think they're going to limit themselves, say, shucks, he said it in Nebraska. Nothing we can do. We have to let him in. Of course not. They're going to say, you said this. No, it's damaging to our public health because the people of California are able to see your information. And we passed this law against your hate speech for public health. And you've negatively affected the public health, so you have broken the law. That's what they would say. So no, I don't think, I think that system's a very poor system. And that's why I think there needs to be fundamental principles, which I have no problem with them being flushed out as time goes on, but the fundamental principle of free speech should be applied to be, you basically have the right to say what you want, with exceptions of things like libel, slander, graphic stuff to children, etc. like that. We could put reasonable limitations on that. But in general, you should have the right to say what you want, regardless if it's true or not. If you say something like, I think vaccines are harmful, I think the earth is flat, you should be allowed to say that. I think Trump's a Russian plant, you should be allowed to say that. I think it's stupid. I think it could be harmful. If you want to say Trump said, Trump's a secret Nazi, you should be allowed to say that. Sucks, but you should be allowed to say it. That's my feeling.
It seems like your position is just the status quo, basically.
Well, it's the status quo when it comes to things like speech, the Second Amendment, etc. Not so much second.
Yeah,
actually, it's not the status quo because I think the government is doing all sort of shady things to censor speech that they don't like, which I disagree with.
Well, so the question then becomes, there's obviously a difference between the government doing something and the government paying somebody else to do it.
Is there?
Yeah, there is.
I don't think there should be.
At least legally there is. I mean, I made the argument elsewhere. That effectively universities are an arm of the state. So,
I think that there's significant questions, and that hopefully they'll be raised. with, if you listen to someone like Mike Benz that talks about how these NGOs are funded by our government and then they have this mission to basically promote censorship of arguments they don't like. I don't think the government should be allowed to do that. The Atlantic Council is basically a cutout for the CIA. So if it's illegal for the CIA to pressure Facebook to censor my post, but they pay the Atlantic Council and say, hey, Atlantic Council, go tell the Facebook to censor Rob's post. No, I don't think they should be allowed to do that. Now, it makes it more difficult, and it makes it more gray, but the principle of it is still being violated. And I think that we should enshrine in law that sorts of things violates the principle of the First Amendment, and that shouldn't be allowed. That's how I look at it. But I gotta let you go. I think there's one other caller. And I can't be here all night, but I do appreciate the call. I just think that I'm very much against sort of a theocracy, and I do believe that because look, even if we take out, like, at the fundamental level, if we say if everyone would believe in the true tenets of Jesus Christ and would act accordingly, what a better world it would be. Yeah, that's true. But even the Bible would say that that's not possible because sin exists and people are fallible, right? And so no one's ever going to act accordingly, even though they should, and it would be better. So that's just a utopian vision. And we could also derive from that not everyone will agree. And there will be people that we're forced to live with that don't agree with our religious beliefs. And the cat's out of the bag at this point. We're not going to kick everyone out that is not your denomination or my denomination of Christianity. So then how could we set up a government to ensure that it's good enough, that the laws being illustrated there are good enough that I could basically live my life as I see fit within my religious confines? That's what the goal is. And it's not tenable to be like, well, I'm Orthodox, that's that. If Orthodox says it's a sin, then it's illegal. And you can quickly see, I think your hesitancy to say everything that's a sin should be illegal kind of speaks to that deep down, that, right? Because if you really think about
it's because a large number of sins are impossible to actually prosecute. Is one major issue, but I don't have like a hard delineating factor on what should and shouldn't be.
Like, give me an example of a sin that would be hard to prosecute.
Lusting after a woman.
Okay. But if we see evidence of it, you post pictures you post on saying, man, I'd like to hook up with her. Now it's clear
but
cut.
the issue. Oh yeah, in that case it would be.
Okay, so should that be illegal?
But the vast majority of cases, it is incredibly difficult.
But we have laws all the But we have laws all the time that are incredibly difficult to prosecute, but we still have them on the books.
Yeah.
Any law that requires intent be proved is very hard to prosecute because it's hard to really see into a person's mind. But we still say it's against the law. We don't say, well, because it would be hard to prosecute, we're not going to make it illegal. So would you be in favor of making lusting after a woman to be illegal? And just admit, yeah, it'll be difficult to prove it in most cases, but it still should be illegal?
In that case, I would say no.
But why? Right? So then there's something beyond just the difficulty to proving it. There's something beyond that that's making you hesitant to say it should be illegal.
Well, yes, but that's a significant factor. Like, I mean, there are certainly all sorts of things that you do not like that you would want to prevent in society, which could be prevented if you could figure out it was happening, but you just fucking can't because it's super different.
But that's
super
different. That's a different question. That's a different question.
Well, for instance, Congress doing insider trading.
Okay. That should be illegal.
Yeah, but but that's like so incredibly difficult to prove given the nature
still
of
should be illegal, regardless if it's difficult to prove. It should still be illegal.
Yeah.
Okay. Why would it be you can't, there has to be something external to just, it's hard to prove. That's why I'm not for it being illegal. Because again, what would be the harm of making it illegal then? Okay, you can only prove 1 out of every 1,000 cases. If all sin should be illegal, then it should be illegal, regardless of how difficult it is to prove. We have other laws that are difficult to prove that we all accept, so why should that one be different? And it seems you're like, well, even beyond that, it still shouldn't be illegal. That's what I'm getting at. What is the
Okay,
beyond
yeah.
that? What is the reservation beyond that?
I suppose it would have to do with something about maintaining a somewhat consistent and contiguous society. I'm not entirely sure what that would all entail, given that I don't. Well,
That's
I mean,
deep though. Now you have to think, what does that mean? Because don't you believe that if your religion, if people practiced your religion faithfully, that society would be better?
yes.
Okay. Well then what do you mean? That you wouldn't make lust, which your religion says is a sin, why shouldn't it be made illegal then? Because if we were able to, the whole point of laws is to try to direct behavior, right? Right? So you want to make something illegal because, or the point of this law would be to make it illegal so that people don't lust, so we don't have lust in society. So why shouldn't it be illegal? If that would be preferable.
I'd say, well, in that case specifically, fear ubiquitousness. I would go so far as to say as like if we were going to try to prosecute people who were doing it, we'd end up with basically the entire male population behind bars.
That's right. Right. So that would be a reason, because everyone sins, that we can't have every sin be against the law. Because society couldn't function.
So starting with that, but obviously, I'm not advocating that. All sin should be against the law.
It seems to me that we accept that we have to live in a society of sin. That there is no way on this earth that we could totally stamp out sin. We can't even do it to ourselves. I can't even do it in one day. I would be hard pressed to go 1 hour without sin. Lying, or I don't think I'm a super bad person, but you see what I mean, right? Like,
yeah.
No one's without sin other than Jesus, right? And so I have to accept that we'll have a society where sin exists. And so the question then becomes, well, should all sin be made illegal? And I think that you could say, well, no, clearly society wouldn't be able to function at all then. Who would run the jails, right? We all sin, so everybody's in jail? Like that seems, or everybody's fined, etc. It seems problematic, right? And so as an extension from then I look at things like homosexuality and I'm like, no, I don't think it should be a sin. And the reason I don't is
illegal.
Because, what's that?
Or illegal, you mean?
Yeah, it shouldn't be a law. Sin's different. It shouldn't be against the law.
Yeah.
And for me, the reason is because, well, I understand that we have to have a society that is not going to be without sin. And it's going to be a society where there are different people's opinions on what is moral and immoral and sinful or not. So we can't have just, I think it's a sin, therefore it should be against the law. There have to be other principles at play here. And what are our principles and what are the limitations on those principles? And so I default to personal autonomy. If you choose to be Muslim, that's fine. Our system should allow that. If I choose to be Christian, that's fine. Our system should allow that. If someone else chooses to be atheist, that's fine. Our system should allow that. And so we have to make sure that there are things that we say, okay, there are principles. Everybody has the right to practice as they see fit and then we say there are certain things. I think that implicit in that is if two consenting adults decide to engage in an intimate relationship, they should be allowed. It should not be against the law. I don't have to be happy about it. I should be allowed to say, I find that grotesque. I find that immoral, etc. I don't want to be around that. I should be allowed to say all of that. But I don't think it should be punishable by law. That's just where I'm at. And I don't think that each state should be able to decide on their own. But I don't know. We can talk later about it. I'm going to bring on EOD and then head to bed here. But I do appreciate the call, Adam. And thank you. It was nice to talk to someone about this that isn't the most important person in the world, that is single-handedly beating back the evils of evolution.
Well, you see, I'm actually similar. I'm the only person in the world who can disprove that the Earth is round. And
there you go. You too. I hope that you're not using.
Globalists have been trying to kill me.
I hope you're not using your real name. The government's no doubt after you. So.
No, that's my real name. That's it.
All right, Adam. Hey, thanks, man. We'll talk soon. Take it easy.
Yep.
All right. Let's get EOD in here, and then What a show tonight, man. It's been a good one. EOD, you there?
Yeah, what's up?
Oh no, not much, man. How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. It's been forever since we talked. How you been doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing some Christmas stuff with the family here. As long as the weather cooperates. Tomorrow we're going on a train ride, a Christmas train ride, and then going to
that'll be cool.
Christmas. Yeah, I'm very excited. I think it's gonna be cool. So what's on your mind tonight?
Oh, well, okay. I'm kind of getting into it with God's favorite and the text chat over here about gay marriage
Okay.
and about whether or not government should be involved in marriage in the first place at all. I know you and I have talked about that briefly before, so I figured it'd be a good one to bring up.
Okay.
But I'll state my stance on it is that I don't think government should be involved in marriage in any way whatsoever, and that it's therefore should not be involved in gay marriage either, and that it should be two consenting parties that are separate, but sometimes they trade resources between one another, and I think that resolves a lot of this shit that's going on with like divorce court and splitting property and all of that kind of thing too. But
I agree with you. That is where I am at as well. I don't think the government should be involved in the institution of marriage, but if they are going to be involved, they should not be allowed to discriminate based on an immutable characteristic like your biological sex.
right.
Or, that's how I feel. Now, let me provide the counter argument to that. The institution of marriage exists to promote the family and having children, which is important for the health of our country. And the government does create laws for the public health. And so therefore, it's one thing to say homosexuality should be illegal. We could agree that that would be bad. But
Yes.
when it comes to the promotion of family values, the government should have the right to do that and to provide financial incentives for doing so. And so the institution of marriage is to promote the having of children, which is something that the government ought to be doing. And because, in theory, only a biological man and a biological woman can have children, that the institution of marriage should be between men and women to promote sort of the biological rearing of children. That's the counter argument. It's the most persuasive argument I've heard. But I have a counter to that too, but I was just wondering what you think about that. That's sort of the argument I've heard that's the best against that.
I tend to agree that was probably the motivations behind supporting marriage in the first place. But I think that we can still provide that benefit and fulfill that desire of the government, or that role of the government to, contribute to society and contribute to civilization at large by incentivizing raising kids, whether they're adopted or conceived naturally or not. So that could still be benefited to gay couples that have, adopted a child or something like that.
Well,
and really, that's the goal, right?
I'm 95%. I might 100% agree with you, but that's the right answer. Basically, though, let's leave adoption out of it because it could get a little murkier, right? My answer to that's then okay, well, if you're only interested in providing incentive for people to biologically have children, then do that. Then provide the tax incentives to the people that biologically have children, right? So if I marry my wife and I never have kids, then financially the government treats me the same way as if we're just dating. But once we have a kid, now you say, okay, you did what we wanted, and now we will provide that financial incentive for you. Because otherwise, at this point, culturally, what's happened is even people that are getting married are having far fewer children. So the institution of marriage, for whatever reason, mostly cultural, isn't leading to sort of children as much as we'd like, birth rates as much as we'd like. So why not cut out the middleman and just say, okay, or maybe you have, and the only counter argument to this would be, but you don't want people just pumping out kids and not being together raising the kids. Okay, then you say people that have children that live in the same household together get these financial breaks. If you split up and you're no longer in the same household, then you don't get the benefit. So that encourages two-parent households that are only biologically capable of having children, which would be men and women, getting these financial incentives. That's fine, because the financial incentive is about having kids. You don't prioritize, you don't provide the incentives for the things you think will lead to the outcome you want. You prioritize the outcome you want, right?
Exactly.
And so now adoption's a different question. Should we, if you say, because you could say, well, adoption's not leading to higher birth rates, right? It might be important to raise kids and to adopt kids. Those might be important things. But if the policy is existing for the public health of increasing birth rates, maybe adoption doesn't do that. So there's potentially an argument there as to why adoption wouldn't apply there. But in general, that's my argument. That if you say no, marriage, the government should recognize marriage because it's about promoting childbirth, right? And only men and women can have children. And so therefore I just say, well, then cut out the middleman. What's marriage have to do with it? Any couple that stays together and biologically has a child gets the benefits. If you're married and you don't have children, you don't get the benefits. Period. End of story. And I've yet to hear a compelling argument as to why that shouldn't be preferred.
I agree. On the topic of adoption, though, I would say that by adopting a child, you're taking them away from the ward of the state, and that's relieving a burden on the taxpayer, and that would justify you getting that benefit when you adopt a kid like that.
Maybe, and I'm not disagreeing necessarily. I'm all for adoption, actually. But then my counter to that would be, if I'm arguing devil's advocate, it's like, fine, but that's not the same thing. If the goal, if you have a program, right? Let's say we want a government program to incentivize people to pick up trash on the side of the road. And so anyone that can prove that they picked up, each garbage of trash you pick, you take it to a certain facility and we'll give you $5, and then someone else says like, yeah, but I recycle a lot at home and that actually saves the government money from XYZ. Well, that's good too. But should you be eligible from that pool of money that was designed specifically for people picking up trash on the road? Probably not. Maybe there's a different pool of money for you because you're helping the government or you're helping society in a different way. So maybe the argument would be, okay, if the program's just going to be about creating children, then no, that program's not accessible to the people that are adopting, even though the people that are adopting are doing a morally good thing and saving the government money. But maybe there's a different fund that we set up for people that adopt, because unlike people that naturally have children, who those children were never wards of the state that were costing the state money, these people aren't naturally having children, so they're not entitled to that incentive, but they are saving the government money by taking these children from being wards of the state. So to me, it almost sounds like it would make sense to have a different program for those people. In my ideal vision, if the vision is people that stay together and have children get certain financial incentives, then that's what the incentive should be. And adoption probably wouldn't meet that. That doesn't mean that adoption shouldn't give different financial incentives. I think they probably should. I agree with you. I just don't think it would be under the same program here.
Okay, that's not inherently disagreeable, but and then it goes back. Okay, let me play devil's advocate here to the gay rights lobby and the activists, and the reason that they're so up in arms about it is, I think, partially from a cultural perspective, they just want to appear normal, and having a wedding in a stained glass window church is normal insofar as society sees it, right? Mm-hmm. But also part of that is that they want to reap the same benefits, and they want to be able to have the same leg up in society, and by separating these things and making them distinct, I think they'd have a problem with that. They'd say, oh, well, that's separate but equal kind of bullshit,
I agree. That is what would say, and I tend to agree with that argument, right? For me, this is the argument I make. If you're Christian and you personally think it's abhorrent to the concept of marriage for two men or two women to get married, then you don't have to recognize that. You could say, in the eyes of me and my God, you aren't married. But you're not the government. And the government, for the purposes of legal purposes, because getting married is a contract, they can't dispute that contract. In my eyes, they should not be allowed based on immutable characteristics. You can't say, I do not honor this contract because you are a man and that's a man. I don't think they should be allowed to do that. You have every right as a religious person to say, F you, I don't think you're really married. But you don't have a right as the government to do so. In my opinion, or you shouldn't have a right. That's how I feel about it. And so, I don't know. Like, for me, it's just, like, and the people that make the argument, like, well, but we're okay with giving them all the financial incentives, right? But they shouldn't be allowed to call it marriage because marriage means something specifically through religion, whatever. Okay, so what does that mean that the government should?
The government shouldn't have anything to fucking do with it, man.
I don't give a shit. Like, me getting married to my wife, yes, I'm willing to take the financial benefits that came with that through the contract that the government recognizes. But the reason I married my wife wasn't that. It's because she is the person I love and want to spend the rest of my life with. And I'm getting married to her in the context of, in the eyes of God, that this is the person that I want to spend the rest of my life with. I want to have children with. It has nothing to do with, oh, the government said it. I want the government to know that. I don't give a shit what the government thinks. I don't care at all. Like they could be like, Rob just married her for financial reasons. He doesn't really love him. Fuck him. I don't care what they think. Whatever.
That's another
they can
thing.
think what they want.
That's another reason why the government should not even be involved in a marriage, is because you get shit like Hugh Hefner marrying, or Pamela Anderson Lee or whatever. Some supermodel comes in and tries to catfish a big fucking billionaire, and then just takes advantage of him when he dies, and takes all of the money and all the assets, and the children of that billionaire get nothing. That kind of shit is fucked.
Yeah. Well, Oliver Twisted says in the chat, but if the government was promoting childbirth, why then would they support gay marriage, which is in direct contract to that?
Yeah.
Well, because
question.
that's not what marriage is. I'm saying the only reason that the government that I find acceptable for the government to be involved in the concept of marriage is because there is a social health to it of creating children. And so if that's the concept, at this point I say, then instead of having them promote the concept of marriage, have them promote financial benefits for a man and woman that stay together and biologically have children. But if that's not it, if that's not what they're going to do, then I don't think that they should be allowed to discriminate based on immutable characteristics. I just don't. And I don't see how you get around this. Like, for me, it just, and I don't really, like, the idea, I guess the harm, that if I'm trying to play devil's advocate, it would say, well, if the government's allowed to promote social health, and we think the normalizing of homosexuality is detrimental to the public health, then the government has the right to not normalize it. And so therefore they have the right to tell people, no, 2 men can't marry each other, 2 women can't marry each other. But I don't think they do have that right, because then there would be all sorts of things that we could say the government has the right to not recognize, such as other people that we think are promoting unhealthy things. So, for example, does that mean that you lose your rights under the government, for example, if you are overweight? Like me, I'm promoting an unhealthy lifestyle, but right?
Or if you're a smoker like me. Yeah.
Right. And there's any number of things that you would say, now the government, normal people that are enabled to have benefits through government action, whether it be tax breaks on certain things, etc. Right? If I'm a small business owner, I don't get the initial tax break for being a small business owner because I'm overweight and I'm promoting an unhealthy lifestyle. These things, I don't know. To me, and I feel that there's a lot, I do. It's one of these things that I guess. And I understand this is the fundamental difference between me, who comes from more of a libertarian adjacent perspective, versus people that come from more of a Christian nationalist perspective. I don't understand. Like, to me, I just don't understand. I agree that there is a problem with not following the letter of the law of the Bible as you see fit, or it's you understand it. I understand that. Anytime you say this is the argument, right, between the atheist and the religious person, this is the argument in a nutshell, right? The atheist is going to say, you can't prove the existence of God, right? And because you can't be 100% certain, you are default saying your entire system of morality comes from something you can't even be certain that exists, which means that your morality is flawed. But the religious person's response to the atheist is going to be, if your set of morality doesn't come from a higher power, then inevitably it'll be subjective, in which case it's not a system of morality at all. How do you know that murder's evil? It's difficult. It's very difficult. And when you hear good Christian debaters, it's very persuasive when they make these arguments in persuasive ways, because it's, one of my favorite debates is Andrew Wilson versus Matt Dillahunty. Right? Where Dillahunty storms out.
Shit, that lasted all in 10 seconds.
Yeah, it was great, though, because even though Andrew is more crude than I would be, what he does is brilliant. Because Dillahunty makes this argument. If you could get past, let's say you're a Dillahunty fan, if you can get past thinking Andrew Wilson's a huge dick, which he is a huge dick. I love him for it. I think it's fine. I don't mind. And I'm sure he doesn't mind that I think he's a dick. He would probably admit it. But if you get past that, he's making a very interesting point. Yeah. Dillahunty says, well, in my secular society, the way we resolve disputes is through intelligent discussion, scientific discovery, and healthy debate, right? And Andrew's basically like, but you're married to a dude that thinks he's a woman. How is that scientific. And Dillahunty storms out. But his entire worldview was the way we resolve things is through rational debate.
And he didn't have that.
He refused to have it.
To do that.
He has a dogmatic belief. He's a woman because he says he's a woman, and fuck you if you say otherwise. I'm storming out. Thereby disproving, right? Because the greater point that Andrew's trying to prove is, how do we determine what's moral or not? Right? And on the fringe of it, like, this sounds simple. It really does. It's like, well, murder is wrong. Why? Because it's wrong. Because you shouldn't end someone's life. Life's important. You shouldn't just end someone's life out of anger. That's, blah, blah, blah. So it sounds like that's self-evidentiary. But you can quickly see how it's not once you get to, is pornography immoral?
Yeah.
Is adultery immoral? Is
denying your own creation immoral?
Is stealing immoral?
Yeah.
Right? Well, what if you steal to feed a child? What would be the moral thing to do? Not steal and leave the child die? Or to steal, right? Like, you quickly see questions of morality, if you don't have a higher power, are very difficult to determine. Why is it the way? And by the way, as shitty as the Bubblegum Gun guy was, there's a point that him and Minar are making that's a legitimate criticism of mine, right? Which is, and that Bubblegum Gun's making that criticism better than at the beginning. I actually thought it would be, sort of be an interesting conversation until I heard him say, "Let's stone all gay people." That kind of irked me a little.
I can't believe he
did, man. He came right out with that shit. That's when I was like, okay, man. And then we quickly went to, he's the most important person in the world. Nonetheless, right? The point is, like, where is your fundamental underlinnings of what you think government should be? What is the core principle of what government should be? And
as little as possible.
Right, but you've already fucked up by saying that because you use the word as possible. Right? And so that's going to be subjective. And now you get a threshold argument. And so the people that can kind of get out of this argument are like the people that say, bam, my religion, right there. I have a document that tells me what's right and wrong. There it is. That's what government should be. The other people that can get away with it are people like the anarcho-capitalists. They're like non-aggression principle. There, that's it. Every situation that you would ever come up with, we could say, bam, there it is. It's non-aggression principle. And once you understand it, that literally applies to any situation. If you're a complete government authoritarian and you say, like, the government always has the right to tell you how to live your life in any choice whatsoever, if they argue it's for the greater good. That's it. And so you could say, does the government have the right to tell me? They'll be like, let me stop you right there. Yes. Whatever you're about to say. And the anarcho-capitalist would say, no. Whatever you're about to say. And the Christian nationalist would say, well, it depends. The government has the right to do what the Bible says. Yeah. To do what God says. And
for a tradcon or a constitutionalist, I guess it would be the Constitution, right? That's what we would rely on.
What we'd say the Constitution, but what are the underpinnings of the Constitution?
It was a huge moral debate about the Enlightenment and the nature of God. And
right. So it's like, why do they believe you have a right to free speech? What's the principle that led them to come to the conclusion that you have a right to free speech? What is it? Right? Only the religious person could say, well, here is where our rights. That's why when you hear it, like the Christian nationalists, you hear this all the time. What are rights? When the government says you have rights, what are they? And it's persuasive. It's hard to put your finger on.
It is.
It really is. But look at how it plays out practically, right?
Well, okay, so the Constitution says God-given rights. So we all endowed by our Creator with certain rights.
Yes.
It doesn't say God. It doesn't necessarily relate to Christianity. There were atheists among the founding fathers, but or agnostic people, I guess.
Even if that's true, what they just say is that there are rights, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, that is enshrined from a higher power, is basically what they're saying. Whether it be Christian, whatever, right? Whatever they got. But then it's like, okay, but what are those life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? What does that mean? Well, the First Amendment. You have the right to free speech. Do you?
Yes, you should.
Well, you think you do, but what if you go to jail? Do you have the right to say whatever you want? No? Do you have a right
but it'll be used against you in court.
Right. So, like, there's you have rights. You don't, like, they would say, you don't have rights because if the government through the force of a gun decides, no, you don't, then you don't. So now, where's your right now? What are you going to do? Protest as they line you up against the wall with the blindfold and the cigarette in your mouth? But I have rights. Sure you do. right? And it's a solid point, right? But the question is, what should we strive for? What are the principles that we should strive for? And then how did you come to that? And it's difficult to say. It's sort of, and it's a clip. And here's the thing. There is utility in trying to look at the philosophical underpinnings and your moral compass and where you get your thoughts from. There's certainly utility in that. But the problem is it quickly could devolve into sort of impracticality. So it's like when you ask someone to define a word, right? Like if I asked you, define the word chair, how would you define it?
Yeah, well, an object with 4 legs and a back and a seat that you can sit in.
But I have a chair right here with 3 legs.
Well, fuck. All right, you got me.
You see? Like, and all this, and you could do this game all night. You could constantly find exceptions to the definition. Now, we all understand what a chair is, but try to define it. Go ahead. It's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult to come up with an all-encompassing definition of any particular word, right, that wouldn't have exceptions. It's incredibly difficult. And I ultimately think that similar things happen when you talk about sort of, well, what are your moral underpinnings? Now, it's easy for the Christian nationalists, right? But then once you get into like, okay, how does this play out practically? Well, and I'm sorry to pick on Andrew Wilson. He's just the most articulate Christian nationalist I've debated against.
Jim Bob is really good too, though.
Jim Bob is good too, right? Yeah. Andrew Wilson believes in his reading of the Bible, which I'll admit, he's far more well-read than me. He believes that when he entered into a covenant of marriage with his wife under the eyes of God, that her body is his body, and he could do whatever he wants to it. Which means that if he says, I want to have intercourse with you tonight, and his wife says no, he could physically hold her down and do it. Even with her screaming and clawing at his face, please stop. And that is not a sin, nor should it be against the law. That is not sexual assault. That's what he believes. Oh, wow. I don't want that enshrined into law.
No, I don't either. That's not cool.
That's what I believe. And so all of the philosophical waxing on of, but where does your morality come from? And all the, like, when it gets to like, okay, let's see how this plays out. Or this bubblegum gun I just talked to, right? Okay, all of the waxing on about, well, morality and this and coming from God and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, how does this play out? Well, first off, we need to stone all the gay people. Right? You see the problem? And it's like, wait, whoa. How does society function in that world? Practically, how does this apply? Right? And so it becomes difficult. Oftentimes it's true. And I'm no deep philosophical person. I'm not. I'm a very fucking simple person. I might be a decent debater, and I might, on the areas that I talk about, I might know more about than the average person just because I've taken an interest into it. But I'm not some deep philosophical thinker by any stretch of the imagination. But it's incredibly difficult if you're really thinking, why do I think what I think? When I look at something and I'm like, wow, that's bad. Why do I think that's bad? Where does that come from? Because even before I was religious, I might say that's bad. But why? What about it? Right? And it's very difficult. And if you say it's because God says it's bad, right? Okay, which is very reasonable. I think that's a reasonable thing to say. Then the question is, well, then what is our role? What do we do about that? Right? What should our government do? What should I do when I see something that's bad because God tells me it's bad? And it's, right, you could quickly see how out of hand it would get. Well, if it's bad,
how subjective it all is.
If it's bad, if God says it's bad, then the government shouldn't allow it. Okay. So then being gay, or like the last caller, Adam Dole there, lust. Yeah. Should it be illegal to lust after someone? Well, it's a sin. God says it's bad. So should it be illegal? Right? And it's like when you start to realize, like, wait a minute, how does this practically play out? What does this look like?
Yeah, it was illegal for a time. Like before Martin Luther, people would pay money to priests to absolve them of their sins. And that was less than ideal for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, and again, I don't mind the people that think like one of the things that I firmly believe is there's room for discussion on things on many levels. Like you could look at, there's these videos I like, I forget, it's like Wired or some stupid website that does these YouTube videos, and it'll be like a music expert explains tone in 5 different levels, right? And so they'll explain it to like a kindergartner. Let me explain to you what tone is. And they explain it in a way that a kindergartner would understand. And then maybe a sixth grader. And then maybe a college band person. And then maybe they're explaining it to a conductor. And then maybe they're explaining it to like the most impressive conductor in the world. So it's 5 levels. And I think that's interesting. But in general, what I'm using it for here is to say there are different levels that you could look at something. Like,
Right.
should
Once you start
abortion-
drilling down into it, some of the details start to make things murky, for sure.
And so, like, there are pragmatic ways you could look at something, right? So I could say, this is what I think about the pardon of Hunter Biden. And I'll have people, and I'm looking at it
Hypocrisy.
sort of in the political sense, in the pragmatic sense of how we play. But you could look at that in a philosophical sense. You could say, like, what does this say about concepts of morality? What does this say about concepts of accountability? Right? You could look at it in that lens, absolutely. You could look at it through sort of a more overarching, I don't use this term derogatively, but like conspiratorial lens. What does this mean about like the greater picture of what the people trying to control the world look at? Or even if you're looking at it in the same level as me, you could just look at it from a different area of that level. So I had a lot of people that were saying like, well, Rob's not bringing up the right part because he's not talking about Hunter Biden. Clearly videos of Hunter Biden having intercourse with an underager. Rob didn't bring that up. And it's like,
Or
well,
weighing drugs or carrying a gun
And
when he's a
you know,
convicted felon.
When someone brought it up to me, I'm like, I don't know. I saw a brief picture. I didn't really delve into those pictures. It's not something that I wanted to do. I did see a picture where there was a girl that looked like she may be underage. There are adult women that look younger. I don't know. Is there any proof that this woman was underage? I don't know. Right? So I haven't really commented on it because I think the way I'm commenting on it are the parts that I'm interested in and I think that they're important. And so I don't mind that there are people like me, right, that are talking about things my way. And then there are people like Andrew Wilson that's talking. We would agree on probably 90 to 95% of what we want to see the world look like. But we're dealing with things at a different, and we debate in very different ways. And then there are people that are looking at things like, you know, take something as simple as, was the 2020 election legitimate? I don't mind the people that say, we want to delve into Dominion voting machines. But I didn't really do that. I was like, well, I have this problem with, what if Dominion didn't cheat? What if a coalition of the intel agencies, academia, the entertainment industry, social media, and media were able to drag someone across the finish line that was basically campaigning out of his basement? What does that mean for the future of elections? Is Google
Where did those 20 million voters go?
Right. Yeah. Is Google going to decide our elections? And people say, but Rob, why aren't you talking about Dominion voting machines? I don't know. Because I'm talking about something I think is important and I'm not an expert on Dominion voting machines and I don't have a problem with people talking about it. Or I debate Destiny and I say, I think Destiny's dog shit because these 5 arguments that he makes are shitty. And someone says, but why aren't you talking about his marriage? Why aren't you talking about his videos that got released? I don't know, because it's not of interest to me. Other people are welcome to talk about that shit. I don't care. Fine by me. So it definitely, I understand. And that's why I get a lot of people that want to talk to me about religion. Because a lot of people see me from the crucible. And they'll say, I like how Andrew smacks around lefties when he debates them. Oh, and here's this guy, Rob. And he, in a different way, he's smacking around lefties in this debate. So I'm going to tune into Rob and see what he says. I'm a big Andrew Wilson fan. Wait, what's this shit? Gay marriage? Fuck
then they want to come at you with the religious stuff.
Right. And so I get a lot of people that's what they want to talk to me about, which I don't mind having that discussion. That's fine. But that's why it comes up a lot. And I'm just saying I look at things in a different way.
A more pragmatic way. I tend to agree with that. I think the founding fathers tended to agree with that too, and I think that sort of aligns with the whole Enlightenment. And when our founding fathers got together and the Enlightenment happened, like they had this sort of view. The agnostics had this view that God spoke to different cultures in different ways, and I tend to accept that God spoke to Buddhists in a particular way, and that God spoke to Taoists in a way, and God spoke to Shinto in a way, and Hindu in a way, and He spoke to Christians in a way. And so we just all have a different experience, a cultural.
Raceland really wants me to let you know that there aren't 20 million missing votes. I think the final tally is going to be probably closer to 2 to 3 million less votes than the first. They're still counting votes today, so who knows how many? Maybe we'll end up with 15 million more votes. I don't know. The original estimate after the day or two said it was something like 13 million. Or something like that. But I even said at the time they're still counting votes. So I don't know. My guess would be that the final tally, I could be wrong, but my guess is there's probably going to be somewhere between 2 to 3 million less votes in this election than the previous election, would be my guess.
I would call that significant in any case.
Well,
However,
it's-
not
it
as
would-
significant as I was saying. But
Yeah. Also, Natalia, thank you so much for the $2 super chat. Says buy more Hawk Tuah coins with this. I will not do that, but thank you for your money anyways. I will stay away from all things Hawk Tuah girl.
Okay.
But
my whole reason for bringing that up is just to say that I think Andrew is sort of dogmatically adherent to some of the fundamental principles of how the Eastern Orthodox Church kind of operates and how their worldview operates, right? And I think that's a little more, shall we say, fundamentalist or adherent than I would be, or you would be, or most Protestants in America would be, I would say. So, but I think when it comes to viewing things through the legal lens, right? You and I seem to have we're perfectly fine with separating our religion and our moral proclivities from what should and should not be legal.
Right.
So whereas a Christian nationalist is fundamentally not going to be okay with that.
Yeah, I mean it's yes, right. But even
which makes
still,
it super problematic when you talk about the sexual battery thing that you just mentioned, right? Like
because what ends up happening is, right, there's a certainty that like, oh, well, my religion's right. Like from an individual's perspective, it makes sense something like this. Well, I know I'm right about who God is and what religion is, and so I have no problem with that also being our system of government and law. I have no problem with it. But what if the person next to you goes, I equally know I'm right, and I have no problem with my system being it. Oh, and there are differences between your system. How do you resolve this, right? And you might say, well, it won't be that important. Well, one of the best Christian nationalists I've debated or heard debate, Andrew Wilson, thinks that you can't sexually assault your wife.
Yeah.
And that should be enshrined in law. I disagree. I think, and so it's like, how do you resolve that? Bubblegum Gun is absolutely convinced that not only he's one of the most important people in the history of the world because the government's trying to kill him because he's been the only person that came up with the concepts to disprove evolution, which will cause mutations, which will kill all of the human race. He also believes that we should have it enshrined in law that we need to stone gay people. And he's utterly convinced that he's right. So who gets to decide? Who are the arbiters of who decides who's interpreting the religion correctly? You know, and it's even outside the scope of religion. It's the fundamental problem with government in the first place. It's why someone like me that believes in limited government has an axiom that's like, you should never wish government to have the power that you wouldn't want your worst enemy to have. So before you give the government the power to, say, violate someone's Fourth Amendment, to go ahead and spy on them, you should say, who is the person I dislike the most in having that power? Let's say it would be Hillary Clinton. Would you be okay with her having that power? And if the answer is no, then you shouldn't want your person to have that power, right? That's the way that we try to coexist as a society that says...
Put the shoe on the other foot. And it's
Right.
only conservatives doing that. It's only you and the folks on the right doing that, man. The left doesn't even think about it.
Of course, they're out there saying Biden should pardon everyone and you could do whatever you want because Trump's corrupt, and so it's all okay, right? But it's the same sort of argument that you have with the religious people. They just say, but I'm right. I'm right. The way I interpret religion's correct. See, here, look, this is what this passage means. This is what this means. And there you go, right? And then someone's equally as competent says, I disagree, right? And let's say one of them's right. Let's say that your interpretation, EOD, is objectively correct. We all die, and those of us that were Christian go to heaven, and God says, EOD was right about everything, okay? But what are the chances that you win out? And that you convince everyone, and that it's your interpretation that becomes law? What are the chances of that?
I probably have a better chance of winning the lottery.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably not good. Now, it might be someone close to you, right? But not someone who has the exact interpretation of you. So are we comfortable with that? And I mean,
yeah.
and again,
But it's
like,
perfect.
there's all kinds of again, even take away that sexual assault. Like, again, there are Christian nationalists that are so against the LGBT community, and they have obvious criticisms that I agree with of how far shit has gone. But shit like, if you're a homosexual, you shouldn't even be allowed on television. That's fucking crazy, in my opinion. That's craziness. Like, even if you're not promoting homosexuality, no, if you're a gay man, you should not be allowed on television. And
We'd have to get rid of all of the late night show hosts, every damn one of them.
And I would assume by proxy, then that would mean, then you can't be a streamer. You can't be on social media, right? Because what's the difference at that point, right?
Yeah,
And so
well, especially these days.
you quickly see the problem.
Yeah.
It's so I don't know. For me, those are sort of the problems I have with sort of a theocratic interpretation of how our government should run, having a theocracy. That's and then even if it runs smoothly. Now, of course, no system is perfect, and like it's easy to sit here and say, but look at the problems with our current system. Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
No system
Yeah.
is
Oh,
perfect. But
that's what appeals to so many people about Marxism is it's written directly as a critique of capitalism and the free world, the Western free world at large. And everybody looks around and they see all the problems and they think, oh, well, here's a formula that's different from that and must be better, therefore. But it ends up being, more authoritarian than anything.
In debate, when I did debate in college, right? There are different types of arguments that you could make, like there were names for them, right? So we did what was called policy debate. So let's say the resolution says something like, the United States federal government should substantially reduce corn subsidies, right? If I'm the affirmative, half the time you're affirmative, where you have to defend the resolution, and half the time you're negative, where you negate the resolution. So as the affirmative, I stand up and say, we should get rid of 50% of corn subsidies in the United States by the year 2030. Okay? That's defending the resolution. I'm affirmative. Now, there are several types of arguments that I could make why that's the case, or that my opponents could make why that would be bad. One of those would be policy. We generally call them policy. And that would be something like this. By reducing corn subsidies 50%, it will encourage more competition, which leads to more jobs, which leads to more international trade, which benefits the economy. Right? That's policy. We're talking about pragmatic, real things that would happen. Right? You could have... Right. And so a policy, it's easier to look at this from a perspective of arguing against the plan. You could have a policy argument. Reducing subsidies would increase the cost of corn, which would lead to people struggling financially and they would starve. That would be a policy negative argument. You could have a performance argument. A performance argument might be like this. You stand up, EOD, and you say, we should reduce corn subsidies by 50%. And I stand up and play Jimi Hendrix playing the national anthem while I piss in a sunflower plant. It is my performance. I'm being an artist, basically. Right? That shit happened. It's fucking crazy. And then you argue why that's somehow... The actions that we have taken in the debate are more important than the arguments we're making. Or something that maybe they wouldn't call performance that would be in line of this is, let's say you're winning the argument, but you call me a fat son of a bitch. Right? And I say, look, even though EOD's won the argument, he has behaved in a way that is unbecoming and should be rejected outside the scope of the argument. Right? So more how we have performed in the debate is more important. One of the arguments you have and that speaks in the line of what you're talking about is a critical argument. We would call it a critique. And a critique would be a philosophical objection to the plan, right? So it would be something like this. Your plan uses the United States federal government, which stole the land from the Native Americans, and so it must be rejected. And you'd be like, what the fuck does that have to do with corn subsidies? Well, you use the government, and by embracing the government, you have embraced a system that fucked over the Native Americans, and so we need to reject that system, right? Now, the most common critique that I heard was a critique of capitalism. They would say, you use the United States government, which engages in a capitalist system, which is bad for XYZ, right? And they would read philosophical critiques of capitalism. So then the obvious response when I got into debate, how would you respond to that? Well, the first question I would ask is, well, what system are you suggesting?
Communism.
No, they wouldn't. They would say, we're not suggesting a system. We're just critiquing yours. And so you'd be like, so are you embracing socialism? Or are you embracing communism? No. So if you stood up and you said, but communism's bad because X, they'd say, we're not communist. And if you said socialism's bad because of X, they'd say, we're not socialist.
I didn't make that argument, bro. What are you talking about?
We're just critiquing capitalism. And the problem fundamentally with that approach is there is no system that is beyond critique. Any system. There is no perfect system of anything. And so you could take what you would think's the most wholesome thing in the world. Hey, my 3-year-old's a really handsome, cool kid. Well, I have critiques of him. I don't like the way that
that's bullshit. Hank is a really cool kid. Right. No one can argue with that.
You could say, well, here's one little thing he does. He still doesn't know how to tie his shoes. I think he should know how to tie his shoes. And it's like, well, what would you have done differently? Oh, I'm not taking a stance on that. I'm just saying he should tie his shoes. And it's like, okay, right? Like, what kid do you see that's better? I'm not saying there is a better kid. I'm just saying he should tie his shoes, right? And so there are ways to get around it, right? But yes, like what you're saying is fundamentally true. That it's you could critique, you could criticize anything. Anything's capable to be. You could look at our system right now, and I can tell you a million things wrong with it. But what's the alternative? Now, I have alternatives. I think we should root out corruption. I think that we should disband 90% of the federal government. But I have to defend, what would that look like? How would we do it, right? If your alternative is, well, Christian nationalism or communism or anarcho-capitalism, you have to ask, are those systems better? What are the potential problems with that? And so, one of the problems is you have people that will say like, well, look at the system now and how it promotes LGBT shit to children. And it's like, yeah, that's shit. We need to do something about that. So therefore, stone gay people. Well, no. And by the way, it's the same problem that I have with like the white nationalist, right? The white nationalist, look, this is going to get clipped and get me into shit, but they make arguments that are absolutely true. And this is why the left will never has so much trouble winning debates against a white nationalist, right? Because the white nationalists, they'll be like, white people get treated like shit, and here's a litany of arguments as to why, and examples. And the leftists will go, now. But the white nationalist is right. White people do get treated like shit. Yes, they do. And there's a bunch of reasons that you could show. Daniel Penny right now is probably going to be convicted because he's white. O.J. Simpson was left off the hook because he's black. I could take courses in college. The jurors admitted that, by the way. They were pissed about Rodney King, so that's why they knew O.J. was guilty, but they voted not guilty because they wanted retribution for Rodney King, right?
Oh,
my God. Like, I took courses in college talking about the evils of whiteness. In debate, being white was a huge detriment. Being a male was a huge detriment, right? All of this shit's true, right? Like, and so when the left just says that's not true, none of this happens, what happens is they're going to lose the debate objectively because the white nationalists will be like, it's true. The problem is their solution. So what's their solution to this? We should kick out everyone that's not white from the country. A white-only country. And it's like, whoa. But they isolate a problem.
A little too far.
The problem, they're not incorrect with a lot of what they're talking about the problem. The problem is the solution. The same is true, I think, with a lot of the talking points of the Christian nationalists. There absolutely are huge problems with secular society. I totally agree. And so like Andrew Wilson's like, I could draw a straight line from gay marriage to transitioning children. We told you. And he's right. They did tell us. But then my point's like, well, what if I say I could draw a straight line from interracial marriage to the transing of children? Because interracial marriage opened marriage up to be more against traditional norms than usual, which led to gay marriage, which led to, right? So should we also ban interracial marriage? Right? Because
he's probably going to stand on his laurels and say, yeah.
Well, he did. He said if I could prove it, he would say yes. And so therein lies the problem. It's like, just because you've identified a problem, what's the solution? And Andrew would say, okay, like Andrew's solution would be something like this. Well, we adopt Christian nationalism or Christian populism, he would call it. And he would say, we outlaw gay marriage. But he would say, we won't make homosexuality illegal. And then you'll have someone like Bubblegum Gun that'll say, but I could draw a direct line from homosexuality being legal to the sexualization of children. So, Andrew, you're just entrenching the problem. You've arbitrarily stopped, which means that the problem will rear its ugly head again because you've had an arbitrary stop in how far we should go. And then what's the response to that? So once you say there's a problem, therefore solution, right? Mm. Someone will always be able to say, using that same logic, I could take the solution even further.
Exactly.
Stone gay people would be up until where you could take it.
You're looking at the problem from the wrong perspective. You think that this is an issue that the government needs to solve, and it's not. It's a societal issue. It's a cultural issue. It needs to be resolved in communities, not at a governmental level. Right.
Well, now, I agree with that. I think that it's cultural, right? And that's where many of these problems need to be solved, right? And it's so for me, it's like I get it, right? And and I'm guilty of the same shit though, right? Yeah. I'll say, like, we need to disband the FBI. And people are like, that's crazy. And then some story will come out of FBI corruption, and I say, see? And people will be like, right, okay, you were right about the FBI corruption, but does that mean your solution is the only possible solution? What if we just want to reform the FBI? And sometimes I do get lazy and I say, no, fuck it, it's not reformable. When maybe I should spend more argument as to why it's not reformable.
Well, we'll see what Kash Patel does. I'm excited about that.
Me too. I hope. We'll see. I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic, but yeah, I'm with you. I'm hoping to see some excitement too. Well, anyways, EOD, I'm going to let you go. So I can wrap up at some point, but it's always a pleasure, man.
Hell yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Cheers, y'all.
Yeah, cheers. We'll talk soon, man.
Yeah, I'll be around.
Bye. All right, there we go. So I had stuff to talk about today, but we talked more about philosophy, religion, etc., which I don't mind. But I think you can see even by my audience that it's smaller than it would normally be. So I probably have about half the people watching that if I'm talking about the political stuff. It's one of the problems with being open to talking about anything. Inevitably, what that means is there's going to be people that want to talk about a certain thing that most of the audience isn't interested in. And I think a lot of my audience is not really inclined to have strong religious beliefs when it comes to politics. So as I delve into it, I think there's a lot of people that tune out on that. But I don't know what else to do other than let people talk about the things that they want to talk about. But that's the positions. Are there chats in the Discord, Rob? I can only see the voice chat. Yeah, there's my Discord channel's got a general community or general tab under the community tab. General memes, clips, healthcare debates, Second Amendment videos. I criminally underuse it, but there are people that chat there. You might have to accept the rules. So if you go into the rules section and then read them, and if you accept them, click the American flag there. You'd maybe you can see the rest of them. So, but yeah, nice talking to everyone there. I enjoyed it. Bubblegum Gun was a little wacky, but whatever. Enjoyable conversation tonight. I will not be streaming tomorrow. I'm going to be doing Christmas stuff. So the next you'll hear me is maybe Sunday night, if work cooperates. I won't be at home, so that'll be a YouTube exclusive. I will be talking to potentially criminal Sean, I think's his name, next Wednesday at 7 p.m. We're going to be talking about the Hunter Biden pardon. I'm trying to set up some debates with people, so hopefully we have that coming soon. And also I'm going to be reaching out to the aforementioned Andrew Wilson, see about maybe doing the arena show again, where I moderated panel debates, except I do it well, unlike most of the panel debates. So we'll be trying to do that and maybe setting up some other stuff as well. So hopefully that's all coming down the pipe. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. I hope you all have a terrific weekend. Maybe I'll do a quick little video or stream tomorrow from my phone from the hotel we'll be staying at, if my wife and Hankster cooperate with it. So if we're having fun doing Christmas stuff, then I probably won't be thinking much about doing a video, but you can have fun and still do a video. All right, thanks, guys. We'll talk to y'all soon. As always, have a good one.